Chapter 183. Hee. Ha! Outside the cave, little Ting Ting was playing happily with a group of little foxes. I didn't expect your sister to hit it off so well with them. Tu Yuan looked at little Ting Ting and the little foxes playing outside. He twirled his long whiskers and nodded with a smile. My sister lacks playmates all year round. It has been hard on her these years. It's good to let her be happy. Liu put down the book in his hand and looked outside. He chuckled and said, Tu Lao and the other juniors probably don't have much fun either. Let them relax for a while. The path of civil and martial arts is one of tension and one of relaxation. It's not good to be too strict and make them hate studying. What little brother said makes sense. Tu Lao poured a pot of tea for Liu and walked out of the cave with a smile. 3 days passed. In these 3 days, Liu studied the cultivation methods of this world. At this moment, he had already comprehended something. The mortal world is like a sea of bitterness. The body is the boat, and the soul is the person on the boat. To transcend the sea of bitterness and build a sturdy boat to cross the sea of bitterness. This is the martial Tao of human immortals. Not building a boat, but training one's swimming skills so that the soul can swim across the sea of bitterness. This is the Tao of the soul. Liu smiled. He already had a clear understanding of the cultivation system of this world. Only cultivating one's life and not one's nature is the first illness of cultivation. However, if one cultivates one's ancestral nature and not one's life, it will be difficult for a spirit to become a saint. Nature is one's nature and the soul. Life is life, it is the body. So, the cultivation of this world is the Tao of dual cultivation. Thinking of this, Liu laughed loudly. The Tao of cultivation in this world had many changes, but it was still the same. To live forever and be immortal, regardless of the cultivation method, it would ultimately fall on the essence, qi, and spirit. Essence was the physique, qi was the vital qi, and spirit was the soul. The Tao of dual cultivation in this world was to absorb the vital qi of heaven and earth to strengthen the physique and the soul, and finally achieve immortality. So this sutra of the past Amitabha is still very valuable. Liu glanced at the past Amitabha Sutra stored in the resource library and nodded with a smile. The past Amitabha Sutra was the supreme scripture of the great Zen temple. It was one of the top soul cultivation techniques in the world. What it took was the divine will of the past is eternal and unchanging, making the spirit be like the past, forever unchanging and irreversible. As long as one's divine soul remained unchanging and unmoving, one would be able to live forever, immortal and indestructible. Using the torrent of time to establish the will, the technique was profound, extremely extraordinary. System: create a virtual cultivation experiment for the past Amitabha Sutra based on my own information. Even if Liu had some understanding of this world's cultivation method, he still had to put safety first. Who knew if the innate saint body, Taoist embryo, and the infinite scripture would have any effect on the sutra of past Amitabha? After handing over the quest to the system, Liu stopped paying attention to it and waited for the system to submit the results. I've been in this world for 3 days. The next thing to consider is the manufacturing system. Liu picked up the teacup and took a sip. Thoughts started to spin in his mind. How should I play the games in this world? At this moment, Liu suddenly thought of the situation in the previous world where heroes fought over the treasures in the ancient emperor's cave abode. An idea suddenly popped up in his mind. What if I disguise the system as a treasure trove? The birth of the ultimate treasure will shake the world. Countless people in the world will fight over it. That seems quite interesting. A strange smile appeared on Liu's lips. He had already made up his mind to ruthlessly scam all the experts in this world. Anyway, no matter who the final host is, they won't be able to escape from my control. They can only obediently collect resources for me. Why should I care about who they are? Very well, let's do that. Liu smiled slightly and started to prepare for the birth of this ultimate treasure. First, this ultimate treasure must be attractive enough. If it's too ordinary, it won't be attractive enough. So, the gimmick must be huge. What's the point of cultivation? There are tens of thousands of cultivation methods. I only have one question. Can one achieve longevity? So, longevity, immortality, and indestructibility. These are the truly attractive parts. Liu glanced at the immortal Ling Long in the resource storage, and the smile on his face became even brighter. The immortal Ling Long was definitely a godly item for showing off. It was born with 9 orifices and could emit the sound of the great Tao. The ethereal sound reverberated, mysterious and unfathomable. It was as if an immortal had descended to the mortal world. If he released a little of the chaotic qi, yin-yang qi, and xianhuang qi in the store, it would cause a phenomenon in the world. The scene would definitely be spectacular and would definitely shock everyone. At that time, the ethereal sound would be heard, chaos would be born, yin and yang would evolve, and xianhuang would surge. Once this scene was displayed, even if he told others that this was a scam, no one would believe him. It would definitely cause all the major forces to fight over it. Very good. The foundation for the treasure trove is already set. Liu nodded and started to prepare for the next step. With enough phenomenon, I still need to arrange a very grand origin for this treasure trove. The birth of chaos and the beginning of an era. There have been many powerful existences in the history of this world. Who should I choose? Liu rubbed his forehead. A name instantly jumped into Liu's mind. There is a Taoist sect in this world, and there's also a grandmaster called Grand. Could it be that I have to be the Grand Eye again? Thinking of this, Liu could not help but chuckle. The title Grand I had been used so many times that he was tired of hearing it. It was better to change it. I might as well just reveal my real name. According to the rules of this world, one word is the most honorable name. I will use the word you as my name. My name is you. Today, I have attained the Tao and become a yang spirit. I have transcended the sea of suffering and reached the other shore. I am grateful that all living beings have fallen into the sea of suffering. I have specially left behind a treasure to prove my Tao as a gift to the fated one. Haha, this seems to be a good way to put it. Although I don't have an ancient origin like an imposter, others can't tell where my name came from, let alone whether it's real or fake. It seems to be a good idea. The rest of the matter was easy to handle. As long as he chose a suitable place and made an earth-shattering commotion, it would naturally attract countless people to swarm over. The so-called treasure of proving my Tao is naturally the system that I created. Liu began to think about what this system should look like. The purpose of creating this system is naturally to facilitate the collection of resources and for me to obtain the cultivation methods, artifacts, and treasures of this world. However, it must also benefit the host. Zhou Yi's experience of fighting monsters and leveling up gave Liu an obvious reference. It was very easy to create a new system. Every time the system recovers something, it will give the host a benefit. As long as the host keeps getting benefits, it will naturally continue to plunder everywhere. Chapter 184. System. Open the workbench. Although the system was still practicing the past Amitabha Sutra, the multi-threaded operation was not a problem for the system at all. Under Liu's command, the workbench was activated instantly. Brilliant multicolored rays of light bloomed on the workbench. Since this system is based on cheating people, cough, collecting resources as its main purpose, then I must highlight the ability in this area. Everything in the world, as long as it contains energy, can be swallowed by the system. So, the system named it Devouring Heaven Great Tao. Appearance? A jade pendant with Tao-dai patterns will do. The multicolored rays of light shone, and a jade pendant with Tao-dai patterns as black as ink and as deep as the dark void appeared. Once it appeared, there was a faint roar of a beast that shook the heavens, and its aura was monstrous. Well, this appearance is already very scary. Liu nodded, touched his chin, and continued. This method of swallowing everything seems a little evil, and it is easy to make people suspicious and fearful. I must give it a dignified reason. Food is the most important thing for people. What living beings in the world have not eaten? Swallowing is the instinctive desire of all living beings, and it is the supreme righteous path. As the foundation of the devouring heaven great Tao, this sentence must be applicable everywhere, and it was an unbreakable truth. Plants needed to absorb sunlight, rain, dew, and nutrients from the earth. This was eating. Cows and sheep ate grass. This was eating. Wolves ate sheep. This was eating. People had to eat when they were alive, which living beings in the world did not eat. With this foundation, the devouring heaven great Tao could not be shaken at all, and it must be the supreme righteous path in the world. After accepting this concept, and then letting the host search everywhere, the reason was very sufficient. As for whether the host would use this system to swallow other people's cultivation, devour other people's souls, or even directly swallow them whole, that was his personal temperament. And what did it have to do with the devouring heaven great Tao? After clarifying the basic rules, Liu began to set the functions of the system. The devouring heaven great Tao needs a small resource bank. With the resource bank, I can recover, decompose, and refine all kinds of resources. The black Taodai jade pendant flashed, and the small resource bank was loaded. The devouring heaven great Tao can be disguised as a magic treasure. It was easier for me to control it, but I didn't need to interact with the host. Similar to the heavenly projectile orb, it also has a fictitious refining program. With the experience of the heaven projecting orb, Liu is able to set up the heaven-devouring grand Tao with ease. Set a phenomenon. Every time the host uses the heaven-devouring great Tao to devour resources, the image of Taodai will appear as a signature feature. Since it was a scam, it naturally couldn't be done silently. There was no movement at all, and no one was able to detect it. So how could they compete for it? Now set the distribution ratio. Every time the host devours a resource, the host must give him some benefits, and the benefits must not be too little. Then, let's split it 20 to 80. The system will recycle 80% of the energy, and the remaining 20% will be used to increase the host cultivation. Giving out 20% was because Liu was too generous. In order to stimulate the host to crazily collect resources, Liu increased the percentage of the share. Otherwise, if he didn't deduct 99%, there would be something wrong with him. There was no doubt that the host would obtain 20% of the energy. Wouldn't there be any loss in energy conversion? The energy obtained from different attributes, different cultivation methods, and different materials would definitely be greatly depleted when converted to the energy used by the host. In addition to resources, I also need to collect cultivation methods. Therefore, I must also stimulate the host to crazily search for cultivation methods. Therefore, the furnace nurtures hundreds of scriptures, refines, and sublimates. Devouring cultivation methods can create stronger cultivation methods. It can also provide the service of converting cultivation methods. The premise is to collect enough cultivation methods as a reference. In addition, weapons, armor, magic treasures, divine artifacts, pills, and natural treasures can all be devoured. If you want to increase your cultivation, the energy can be used to increase your cultivation. If you want to refine your own magic treasures, it can also be used to improve your own magic treasures. With these functions, anyone who obtained the heaven-devouring great Tao would crazily collect resources. The main functions have been set up. The rest is the authority setting. Liu chuckled. Without a doubt, I must be the one with the highest authority, and I must make it impossible for the host to detect this. As for the origin, it is naturally a treasure refined by venerable sun god Yu. After the setting was completed, the five-colored light bloomed. The heaven-devouring great Tao had been created. The next step is to find a suitable place to play a treasure hunt. Liu walked out of the cave and turned his head to look at the endless West Mountain. A smile appeared on his face. In the depths of the West Mountain, there are deep mountains and old forests everywhere. Any place will do. Looking up at little Ting Ting, who was playing with a group of little foxes, Liu smiled and did not disturb little Ting Ting. He began to think about how to set up the treasure when it appeared. First of all, there must be a cave abode. Since it is an expert who has transcended the nirvana realm, there must be a cave abode that matches the identity of the expert. It doesn't need to be gorgeous, but must be unfathomable and extraordinary. This problem was not difficult. He could casually dig a cave with sword energy and then brush it with the chi of heaven and earth. It would definitely be extraordinary. Wait. An expert who has transcended the nirvana realm can evolve a small chiliocosm. How can I casually dig a hole? This definitely won't do. Liu opened the system repository and saw the empty ancient world of Heavenly Tomb. He nodded his head in satisfaction. This thing is not bad. There's a vast space inside, and there are all kinds of buildings. It is very suitable to be the cave abode of an expert from the Nirvana realm. After making up his mind, Liu began to create a Heavenly Tomb instance dungeon. System, extract the energy of the Heavenly Tomb and modify it. An expert's cave abode would, of course, not look like a cemetery like the Heavenly Tomb. Moreover, the buildings in the Heavenly Tomb had a strong, otherworldly aura and did not match the environment of the current world. It had to be modified. Liu scanned the books in the old fox's cave. Not only were there books on cultivation, but there were also travel notes, local customs, and all kinds of other books. Based on the information, the system quickly submitted the modification plan for the Heavenly Tomb. Very good. Modify it according to this. Liu looked at the ancient building design and nodded his head in satisfaction. With a command, the interior of the ancient world of Heavenly Tomb underwent a drastic change. In the vast space, the densely packed tombs disappeared. Ancient buildings with heavy eaves and arches rose from the ground. How can there be no monsters in a cave abode instance dungeon? Moreover, it is abnormal to obtain a rare treasure without overcoming many difficulties. So this is a test. Liu sneered and threw the 26 bodies refined in the main world into the Heavenly Tomb. These bodies were handed over after Zhou killed monsters and leveled up. They all had the cultivation base of the 4 extremes of the Tao Palace. Even their virtual souls were ready-made. As long as he poured his cultivation base into them, they would be a good fighter. Then, Liu extracted the sword energy from the sword pool and the lightning from the lightning pool from the merchant shop. He even threw in a lot of strange flames from the previous world. Of course, with danger, there would naturally be rewards. Thus, Liu also threw in some medicinal pills and soul race's fighting skills from the previous world. As for whether or not these medicinal pills would cause one to be poisoned and whether or not the soul race's fighting skills would cause one to go berserk, Liu expressed that it was none of his business. As a result, a cave-dwelling instance dungeon that could kill people without paying for it was completed. Chapter 185. The heavy snow that had persisted for 5 days finally stopped. The blue sky was clear as if it had been washed, and the brilliant sunlight shone down on the earth. The snow-covered ground shone with a dazzling light under the sunlight. The trees formed from icicles were like jade trees, radiating light in all directions. What a great day! Liu walked out of the cave and looked at the snow-covered mountains that were emitting a pure and holy light under the sunlight. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Such great weather! It's very suitable for scaring people. Liu chuckled and turned his head to look at little Ting Ting, who was still sleeping soundly under the blanket. He smiled and nodded his head. The little foxes were huddled together with little Ting Ting, especially the little green fox. Even its furry tail was resting beside little Ting Ting's neck. Since you're sleeping so soundly, I won't wake you up. Hee hee. When you wake up, this world will be very different. Liu smiled and took a step forward, instantly disappearing without a trace. Thousands of miles away from the secluded valley, Liu's figure appeared on a towering mountain peak. This was the tallest mountain in the surrounding 1,000 miles. Although it was a nameless mountain, although it looked like an ordinary mountain without any immortal aura, but after today it would definitely shock the world. A mountain is famous not because of its height, but because of its immortal aura. Liu chose a flat rocky ground on the mountain peak and waved his hand to take out the ancient world Heavenly Tomb. After today, this mountain will definitely be famous because of me. The name of you mountain will definitely spread throughout the world. Grabbing the stone mill in the ancient world heavenly tomb, Liu pressed his hand and directly used a spatial teleportation technique to send the stone mill into the mountain. The cave residence has been set up, but now it's missing a door. Liu walked towards a cliff on the right and used a wisp of Xianhuang Qi to brush the cliff. A simple and heavy stone door with a strong ancient style appeared on the cliff. Xianhuang Qi, also known as Xianhuang Source Qi, was the origin of all things in the world. Through this strand of Xianhuang Qi, Liu could move the rock according to his will and shape it into any shape. The simple and unadorned stone door didn't have any decorations. Instead, it looked very modeled and was filled with the vicissitudes of history. Only the aura of the Xianhuang Qi remained, revealing the heaviness of the earth that bore all things. It seemed extraordinary. That's right. Next, we just need to connect it to the ancient world's heavenly tomb. Liu nodded. According to the method of space energy operation that he learned in the last world, he reached out his finger and pointed at the stone door. A water ripple-like light screen lit up on the stone door, and the faint crystal light rippled like water. The spatial energy in this world was also very active. There were countless divine abilities and spells that could open up small spaces and spatial passageways. The space technique that the system had analyzed in the previous world could be traced back to its origin, and there was no obstruction in this world. All right, everything is ready. We just have to wait for the great ancient Emperor Yu to become a sun god. A smile appeared on Liu's face. Following the set routine, he started this grand performance. Rumble. A grayish airflow rushed into the sky, like a pillar that reached the heavens and the earth, standing between the heaven and earth. A vast and boundless aura that represented the beginning of the heaven and earth, the origin of all things, was emitted from this pillar. For a moment, the heaven and earth shook. This chaotic aura that represented the origin of the world appeared, and the heaven and earth elemental qi that permeated the heaven and earth suddenly stirred wildly. Endless heaven and earth elemental qi crazily rushed towards the chaotic aura, constantly gathering into the chaotic aura, returning to its origin, causing this chaotic aura to grow slightly. There's such a thing? Liu stood in the middle of the pillar formed by the chaotic aura, feeling the heaven and earth elemental qi crazily rushing towards him. He was slightly surprised. This is good. It's more beneficial to my plan. Liu smiled and didn't care. Liu didn't care, but the rest of the people in this world were scared half to death. Puff. Anyone who was cultivating at this time was hit by this violent surge of heaven and earth elemental qi, causing them to vomit blood. This earth-shattering vision shocked the world. Great Qian, Yunmeng, Yuan-Tu, Rurin, Luo, Yun Nation, as well as the islands overseas, all the countries in the world, and the entire vast thousand world were shocked by this pillar formed by the chaotic aura. Even the heavens beyond the vast thousand world were shocked by this chaotic aura. Note, this vast thousand world is not an endless plane, but the name of this world is the vast thousand world. This is in the jade capital of the great Qian dynasty. The Qian emperor rushed out of the palace with a look of shock. He looked up at the pillar in the distance, his face full of shock. What's going on? This vision, what exactly is going on? I've mastered the Sutra of Death from the future and can manifest the Master of the Future, so I can predict the future. Why have I never predicted this situation? This vision. In the Wuhan Marquis residence, Hong Xuanji rushed out of the study with a look of shock. His usual calmness was long gone. What exactly is going on? In the Hong residence, a young man in green who was about 16 years old also ran out of the room to the courtyard and stared at the pillar of chaos in the distance with his mouth agape. Is this the great magical power of a cultivator mentioned in the books? This vision is indeed extraordinary. If only I could sigh. Just as he thought of this, the young man let out a long sigh. Father has never allowed me to cultivate. I'm afraid such an extraordinary thing is not fated with me. Bastard. At this moment, Hong Xuanji realized that a large group of people had run out of the courtyard. Seeing the panic-stricken crowd, especially the 16-year-old young man in green, Hong Xuanji was somewhat displeased. Calm down in the face of a major event. How can you be so panic-stricken? All of you get lost. Hong Xuanji roared angrily, and the crowd immediately fled in panic. The young man in green called Hong. He also hurriedly turned back to his room amidst this reprimand. Grand Supreme Tao Sect. Roar. A loud dragon's roar sounded as 9 flaming dragons soared into the sky. A human figure stood in the void as 9 flaming dragons danced around him. This is the chaotic aura. Meng Xinji's calm expression was now one of shock. The creation of chaos, the beginning of an epoch, and the evolution of the world. How can such a phenomenon appear within the great Qian dynasty? At the same time, similar scenes were taking place all over the world. Countless people from various countries and sects stared in shock at the primal chaos qi that seemed to pierce through the heavens and earth. They were inexplicably shocked. Under everyone's horrified gazes, the chaotic qi suddenly underwent a change. Within the chaotic aura, a black and white aura suddenly shot out. All of a sudden, yin and yang split, time flowed, the 4 seasons alternated, and rain and snow. All sorts of strange phenomena appeared. Following this, another black and yellow aura shot out, causing the earth to tremble. In the sky, the evolution of the earth, the growth of all living things, and the withering of plants and trees appeared. Ding! A mysterious heavenly sound rang out. It was ethereal and filled with a myriad of phenomena. My name is Yu. I have attained the Tao and become a Yang God. I have transcended the sea of bitterness. In remembrance of the suffering of all living things, I have left behind a treasure for the fated one. A voice sounded from within the ethereal heavenly sound. The voice was like thunder, shaking heaven and earth. Yang God, someone has attained the great Tao of the Yang God, a supreme treasure, a Yang God supreme treasure. Once this was said, the entire world erupted into chaos. Chapter 186. After the primordial era, someone actually became a Yang God? In an inexplicable space, a surprised voice suddenly sounded from the endless light. The voice was extremely old, but it seemed to carry the power of heaven and earth. The soft surprise caused the entire space to tremble violently. It was as if even the space was trembling under this person's power. You? Who is this? Why can't I deduce this person's origin? Is he someone beyond my calculations? I have to go and take a look. A stream of light rushed out of the void and landed in the territory of the great Qian dynasty. At the same time, in another indescribable space, someone also opened his eyes in surprise. Endless light bloomed from his eyes. The creation of heaven and earth and all living things grew. You? Who is this? There's no such person in the future that I deduced. No, I have to go and take a look. Another stream of light fell into the great wide world. In the West Mountain, Liu stood in the chaotic airflow and nodded in satisfaction when he saw the commotion that he had caused. This scene is already scary enough. Liu smiled as he looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky. He was ready to end the battle. Since I've left behind the Tao of Heaven Devouring, it's only natural that I reveal the Tao of Heaven Devouring at the end. He directly opened the system resource library, and an invisible wave rushed out, forming a huge black hole in midair. It was as if an invisible giant mouth had appeared in the sky, and an endless devouring power suddenly erupted. All the scenes in the sky were instantly swept away and swallowed by this huge mouth. Coincidentally, at this moment, 2 streams of light jumped out of the inexplicable space. Then, under this devouring power, the 2 streams of light did not even have the chance to struggle and were instantly swallowed. In the inexplicable space, a muffled groan came from the brilliant light. A majestic anger suddenly erupted, and the inexplicable space shook violently. You destroyed one of my thoughts in an instant? You? Very good. The light instantly quieted down, and the space returned to calm. In another inexplicable space. He's actually so strong. Amidst the scenes of creation in the sky, a figure suddenly sat up. You? Is that power that devours all things your young god great Tao? I didn't expect that there would be someone like you after the primordial era. Very good. Then, the entire space returned to silence. The Western Mountains. Liu opened the resource vault and swallowed the phenomenon in one gulp. Then, he took a step forward and returned to the Fox Clan's valley. Brother, it was so scary just now. When little Ting saw Liu appear, she hurriedly ran over. She seemed to be frightened by the commotion that Liu had just made. Big brother is here, don't be afraid. Liu picked up Xiao Ting and patted her back to comfort her. Looking up at the sky, Liu's lips curled into a smile. At this time, the people who should be moving have already moved. A moment later, a series of whistling sounds could be heard in the sky. Streaks of light streaked across the sky, whistling as they charged into the depths of the West Mountain. Boom! The space shook violently, and a gourd with flowing light rushed out of the void. With a flash of clear light, a group of people appeared at the peak of Mount Yu. The closest person, Autarch Qian, led a group of subordinates and used the gourd of fortune to break through the void and arrive at the peak of Mount Yu. You guys guard the surroundings. Autarch Qian waved his hand, then said to Hong Xuanji, Xuanji, follow me. Yes, Hong Xuanji replied, then followed Autarch Qian to the simple stone door in front of them. It's simple and unadorned, like the heaviness of the earth that bears all things. Just a door alone is already so impressive. No wonder he is a master who has reached the Yang spirit realm. Autarch Qian looked up at the simple stone door and nodded in admiration. Then he asked Hong Xuanji, Xuanji, you're very knowledgeable. Do you know the origin of you? I'm ashamed. Hong Xuanji smiled bitterly and shook his head. I've read all the classics and histories, but I've never heard of this person. However, this stone door was made in the ancient era. To be able to survive until now and reach the sun god realm, this person should be an ancient emperor. The ancient emperor, Emperor Yu. Autarch Qian nodded. Then let's go see what treasures emperor you left behind. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before Autarch Qian and Hong Xuanji could enter the stone door, streams of light whizzed through the air. Demons from outside. How dare you be so presumptuous in the territory of the Qian? The purpose of these people was naturally for the treasures in Emperor Yu's cave. Hong Xuanji was a decisive person, so he naturally wouldn't waste his breath and directly punched out. Heavenly Wheel of Death. With a punch, a mighty atmosphere rushed into the sky. All living beings in the heavens were in the cycle of life and death. This punch was powerful, and its chi and blood were like rainbows. The fact that they were able to fly here on their magic tools and arrive first, aside from the fact that they were the closest, was that they were all people with extraordinary cultivation bases. Hong Xuanji punched out. The atmosphere was strict. These people were not easy to deal with. Seeing Hong Xuanji and the others' posture, it was obvious that they wanted to monopolize Emperor Yu's cave, so these people naturally wouldn't let them do as they wished. Kill. Flying swords whizzed through the air, flying needles shuttled through the air like thin threads, and mysterious spells blasted out. Even if Hong Xuanji's strength was extraordinary, his current strength was not enough to sweep through them. Although he managed to push these people back with a punch, he couldn't kill them. Roar, with a deafening dragon roar. The 9-flame dragon whizzed through the air. Dream God Base. Hong Xuanji's face changed, and his expression became very serious. After the appearance of the 9-flame dragons, more figures appeared in the sky, piercing through the air. These were the ones who were close, and there must be more who were desperately rushing over. Xuanji, there's no need to stop them. Quickly enter Emperor Yu's cave. Autarch Qian was not an indecisive person, and it was obviously impossible to stop the others from entering Emperor Yu's cave. He hurriedly called out to Hong Xuanji and rushed towards the stone door. Yes, with no hope of stopping them, Hong Xuanji immediately let go and turned to follow Autarch Qian into the stone door. At this time, the people present no longer had the heart to fight, and they all flew towards the stone door. When like a ripple of water, the ancient stone door flashed with a clear light of colored glaze, and everyone arrived at another world in an instant. In front of them was a vast world. The sky was high, and the clouds were light, and the sky was clear. Underground mountains stood tall, and the forest was green. The plains were endless, and the grass was green. Rivers flowed, and the water flowed endlessly. Among the mountains, there were many majestic and ancient palaces. The entire world was filled with extremely rich heaven and earth essence chi. When the people stepped into this place, they felt that their bodies were soaked in the heaven and earth essence chi, and it was extremely comfortable. As expected of the cave of the great ancient emperor, the sun god sage has the power to create heaven and earth. It's really terrifying. The small world in front of them was a complete world. Emperor used treasure. The fated one will obtain it. Go, go, go. Let's go look for the treasure. After a moment of shock, the people immediately remembered the purpose of this trip, and they all whistled through the air and scattered in all directions. Then, more and more people entered Emperor Yu's cave, and even more people were on their way to the cave. Heroes of the world, all are in my trap. As the mastermind behind the scene, Li Yu saw this scene and happily hugged little Ting Ting and spun a few rounds. Little Ting Ting was so happy that she could not stop laughing. Chapter 187. The pit has been dug. Let them do it first. Li Yu cut off the system connection of the devouring heaven great way in the tomb of heaven and focused on himself. This was because the system had reminded him that there was an unexpected gain in the resource warehouse. After putting Xiao Tingting down and letting her play with the little foxes, Li Yu found a stool in the cave and sat down. Two thoughts of immortal young gods. Seeing the two gems in the resource warehouse that were as crystal clear as diamonds, Li Yu was stunned for a moment and then praised them in his heart. A thought is actually like a gem, crystal clear as glass, as expected of a figure standing at the top of this world. At this time, Li Yu already knew where these two thoughts came from. The system replayed the scene in Li Yu's mind, and Li Yu saw the process very clearly. When Li Yu turned on the recovery function of the resource warehouse, an invisible black hole appeared and swallowed the surrounding vision. At this time, two light spots broke through the air and rushed in as if they were looking for death. Then, they were directly recovered by the resource warehouse. What the F***CK? How unlucky is this? Li Yu gloated in his heart. Li Yu naturally knew the purpose of these two thoughts. They must have seen that he had made such a big noise that two old farts couldn't sit still and wanted to find out what was going on. However, they didn't expect that they would be so unlucky that they would run into the recovery channel opened by the system's resource warehouse and be directly taken in by Li Yu. If they hadn't been so unlucky, Li Yu would have had to use the Green Lotus Emperor weapon or the invisible immortal fire in the immortal mansion to kill the two thoughts. In that case, the thoughts would definitely be destroyed. However, after they were destroyed, Li Yu wouldn't be able to get anything. Now, he had directly received two complete thoughts of Sun God, which was a great gain. System, scan the two Sun God thoughts, extract all the memories in them, break down and organize all the information, and enter them into the resource warehouse. Immortal Yang Shun had 129,600 thoughts, each of which contained his complete memory. As long as one's was not extinguished, one could live forever. Therefore, these two thoughts contained all the information about the two Yang gods. Their knowledge, comprehension of cultivation, and secret techniques had all become Li Yu's. Extraction complete. Recording complete. The system notification rang out, and countless information items appeared in Li Yu's mind. Li Yu couldn't help but gasp when he saw the most eye-catching items. Heavenly Scripture of Fortune. The method to refine the boat of creation. Longevity, Heavenly Scripture. Immortal Monument, refining technique. Putting aside the other items, just these 4 items made Li Yu feel like he had eaten too much. The two classics pointed directly to the great way of Yang spirit, and they were the personal understandings of the people who created the cultivation methods. With these two cultivation methods, Liu could let the system analyze the principles of this world's cultivation methods. The Abode of Creation and the Immortal Monument were two of the most powerful treasures in this world. Although Liu didn't have to refine these things, he could also analyze the principles of this world's refining through this refining method. As for the other cultivation methods, cultivation understandings, and knowledge, they were also worthy of Liu's reference. Very good, Liu chuckled. System, use the information extracted from the two sun god thoughts to analyze the principles of this world's cultivation. With the cultivation understandings and experiences of the two yang gods as reference, the system could analyze the principles of this world's cultivation with its mighty power. From there, it would be refined and sublimated, which would definitely benefit Liu a lot. Analysis complete. The system quickly completed Liu's instructions and handed the conclusion to Liu. The path of the human immortal is to train the flesh, tendons, skin, bones, viscera, marrow, and blood. Train the entire body from the inside out. The first thing Liu saw was the system's analysis of the human immortal's martial path. At this moment, Liu was cultivating the infinite scripture and had already perfected the dragon realm. Compared to the path of the spirit that required one to start from scratch, the immortal body of the human immortal seemed to be easier to master. They're actually all using fist techniques to train the body. It's somewhat similar to the internal fist techniques of a world I came from before I transmigrated. This cultivation method was ridiculously weak before the human immortal stage. According to the introduction, with Liu's current strength, he could kill 100 martial saints in the blood-changing realm with a single slap. When Liu saw the level of aperture training, his expression became serious. 129,600 acupoints. One aperture leads to 100 apertures. In fact, there are 1296 major apertures, and each major aperture is made up of 100 apertures. The number of yuan? There are actually so many apertures in the human body. The body training method of the Kangwu Academy also had the level of aperture awakening. However, the Kangwu Academy's aperture awakening was only the number of circulations, and there were only 360 apertures. Comparing the two, Liu realized that the aperture training method of this world completely included the 360 apertures of the Kangwu Academy, and there were almost 1,000 additional apertures. This was only in terms of major apertures. The cultivation method of the Kangwu Academy did not involve the minor apertures within the major apertures at all. The path of the human immortal, the immortal body. It's indeed extraordinary. Liu continued reading and realized that there were still a few more stages of cultivation in the human immortal stage. The first stage, fist intent materialization. Martial intent materialization and materialization. If the fist intent was a mountain, the fist intent materialization would become a real mountain with a punch. At this level, one's strength could move mountains and fill seas. The second stage, flesh regeneration. Life force was extremely strong, and injuries could be healed instantly. The life imprint was branded into every inch of the body. As long as there was a drop of flesh remaining, one could be reborn from a drop of blood. Martial cultivators at this level could no longer be killed by ordinary methods. The third stage, myriad of transformations. When the body was cultivated to this level, it had already transformed into 480 million tiny talismans. Each talisman contained all the information of the body. 480 million talismans could be combined at will, and their forms could be gathered and dispersed at will. At their level, unless it was the strongest divine artifact or a peerless technique, they would simply be incapable of killing off a human immortal who could take on a myriad of forms. The fourth stage, vacuum shattering. This was the final step in the path of the human immortal. Vacuum shattering, transcending, and from then on, one's physical body would become a saint. With a raise of one's hand, one would have the power to destroy heaven and earth. A human immortal who had shattered vacuum could not be killed unless the great Tao intent of eternity or nirvana was used to erase the life imprint from the body. However, a human immortal who had shattered vacuum was not the strongest in this world. Moreover, they only had 1 yuan's lifespan and could only live for 129,600 years at most. If one wanted to live forever and be immortal, only the Sun Spirit could do so, become the Sun Spirit, then transcend the sea of suffering and reach the other shore. The Sun Spirit of the Nirvana realm is the strongest power in this world. Only then can one become a true immortal. Only then can one become truly immortal. This was what Li Yu was interested in. Chapter 188. A lifespan of 129,600 years was not considered little. However, with Li Yu's vision, if he wanted to do something, he had to do it to the best of his ability. An immortal and indestructible Yang Spirit Great Tao was right in front of him, so naturally, he would not let it go. Li Yu focused his attention on the Yang Spirit Great Tao summarized by the system. The old fox had also talked about the cultivation method of the divine soul before, but the system's induction was much clearer and more specific. There are a total of 10 realms on the path of the Yang Spirit. What the old fox said before was not wrong. Li Yu nodded and looked at them one by one. The first realm, concentration. It was to subdue one's mind, calm one's mind, and calm one's mind, clear one's mind, and not have any distracting thoughts. Only in this way could one feel where one's soul was, where one's mind resided, and only then could one cultivate and strengthen one's soul. It's just the basics of cultivation. Li Yu glanced at the introduction of the concentration realm. It was no different from the way of qi cultivation, so he did not look at it carefully. The second realm, out of body, was to stabilize the soul and be able to leave the body and move around the body. Out of body, soul leaving the body? That's interesting. Li Yu smiled and continued to look at the next 2 realms, night wandering and day wandering. Night wandering and day wandering are when the soul leaves the body and moves around at night and during the day. Seeing this, Li Yu chuckled. Isn't this night wandering God? Then, with a little illusion, it becomes ghost hitting the wall. The first 4 realms of soul cultivation are so weak that it's unbearable to look at. Seeing the introduction of the first 4 realms, Li Yu was very disappointed. I can only use some illusion methods to confuse the mind. Even against ordinary people, if their will is strong and they have enough qi and blood, it won't work. With some disappointment, Li Yu looked at the introduction of the 5th realm, object driving. Is this how the flying swords of this world are made? Interesting. The 5th realm, object driving, surprised Li Yu. The soul leaves the body and then drives the flying sword to attack with the soul. Lethality is completely dependent on the sharpness of the weapon and the agility of the weapon. After the initial shock, Li Yu fiercely curled his lips. No sword energy, only the sharpness of the flying sword itself to kill the enemy. The power of this kind of flying sword is simply not worth mentioning. Seeing the 6th realm, manifestation, Li Yu's interest was piqued. Is that what reveal means? The previous astral projection of the soul was a formless and intangible soul. When it comes to manifestation, it can manifest with the help of external objects. In the manifestation realm, with the help of dust, water, fog, sand, and other materials that could be shaped, one's spirit could condense into a real form in the outside world. Of course, the best thing to rely on was naturally lead and mercury. Using a secret method to refine the lead mercury gene Dan, and using the lead mercury gold energy to shape the body, the divine soul would be able to unleash a great destructive power. The so-called great lethality of lead and mercury is nothing more than a metal body formed from mercury. I hope the later realms are stronger. Otherwise, this Tao of the divine soul is really too weak. The 7th realm possession greatly piqued Li Yu's interest. Possession can possess the bodies of various animals and can even possess the bodies of people with weaker qi and blood. Isn't this ghostly possession? Seeing the seventh realm possession, Liu laughed loudly. This thing is quite fun. Possessing all kinds of animals, birds, fish, wild beasts, if it's used for spying, cough cough, if it's used for scouting the enemy, the effect is quite good. Liu smiled and shook his head. Then, he looked at the eighth realm possession. Ghost immortal? Possession at the eighth realm means that the soul can leave the body and live forever. It's already immortal? Seeing the introduction of the eighth realm possession, Liu's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly read on. After reading, Liu felt very disappointed. The eighth realm is called Ghost Immortal. Indeed, after the body dies, the soul can possess another body and continue to live. But to possess an adult, one can only choose those with weaker chi and blood and will. Liu shook his head. It's fine if the will is weak, but if the chi and blood are weak, the body will definitely be weak and sickly. What's the point of possessing such a body? If one possesses a fetus. Thinking of this, Liu suddenly remembered what the old fox had said. When a foreign species cultivated to the ghost immortal realm, they would disintegrate their demon bodies and possess the fetus in a pregnant woman's body. Then, they would be reincarnated as a human. But reincarnation is not without risks. Reincarnation was a mystery in the fetus. If the will was not strong and the soul was not stable, there was a possibility that they would never wake up. When that time came, they would die silently and tragically. The ghost immortal possession technique has endless drawbacks and is too risky. It's not suitable. Liu shook his head and continued reading. I hope the later realms don't disappoint me. Otherwise, this Yang God Dao is really useless. Thunder Tribulation Ghost Immortal. The soul will turn from yin to yang. After each tribulation, the strength will be earth-shattering. Reading the introduction of the Thunder Tribulation Ghost Immortal, Liu's eyes widened. Damn, the difference in strength before and after is too big. Before the Thunder Tribulation, Liu could shake a bunch of so-called ghost immortals with a sneeze. But after the Thunder Tribulation, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Is this the characteristic of the cultivation techniques of this world? Liu thought of the cultivation technique of the immortal realm. It was the same situation. In martial arts cultivation, before the immortal realm, the strength was also unbelievably weak. Once the immortal realm was promoted, the immortal realm could move mountains and fill the sea. There were countless changes, and even destroying the world was not a problem. Now, the cultivation of the soul was in a similar situation. Before the Thunder Tribulation, the soul cultivation was simply unbearably weak. After the Thunder Tribulation, the soul cultivation path would become powerful. First tribulation, pure yang thought. Second tribulation, fine light thought. Third tribulation, electric arc. Fourth tribulation, one thought, one world. Fifth tribulation, sudden inspiration. Sixth tribulation, void shattering. Seventh tribulation, void creation. Eighth tribulation, soul refinement. Ninth tribulation, thunder transformation into water. Reading the introductions one by one, Liu's mouth opened wider and wider. The first three tribulations are not too strong. The later ones, one thought, one world, void shattering, void creation, and so on, are already very scary. Not to mention anything else, just void creation. According to the saying of this world, the seventh Thunder Tribulation was also called Creator. There is no need to explain the title of Creator. Eight Thunder Tribulations, Soul Refinement. What kind of God did he become? Primordial Spirit. Holy *T. Eight Thunder Tribulations, and he has already cultivated Primordial Spirit. Liu is naturally familiar with the Primordial Spirit. He had called himself Grand Supreme for many years, so how could he not know about one turning into three pure ones? 9 Thunder Tribulations, thunder transformation into water. It didn't seem like a big deal, but when he thought about it carefully, this was a change in the nature of things. Thunder transformation into water was similar to another very familiar supernatural power, stone turning to gold. Both sounded unremarkable, but in fact, this was completely changing the nature of things. It was already the means of immortals. The body was at the peak of the human immortal realm, and the soul had to go through 9 thunder tribulations. Only then could the soul and body become one and advance to the yang spirit. The yang spirit shattered the vacuum, and with the power of great aspirations, transcended the nirvana realm. Only after becoming the yang spirit of the nirvana realm could one become a true immortal, truly immortal and immortal. The cultivation method of this world seems to be able to be achieved quickly. You thought of the guy who created the way of the Book of Changes. From a mortal to a yang spirit and transcending the nirvana realm, it only took him a mere 5 to 6 years. In other words, seclusion would take more than a few years. With my resources, could it be that I can't compare to him? Liu took a deep breath. The path to immortality is right in front of me. Because many readers had not read the original book and did not understand the realm, he explained it. Chapter 189. Emperor Yu's Cave. In the vast space, there were dozens of majestic halls. In such a large space, there were so many halls and there were no hints. If they wanted to find the treasure, they could only rely on luck. Everyone who had entered Emperor Yu's cave rushed out without any delay. The halls were the focus of everyone's attention. But which of the 26 palaces was the true treasure trove? Everyone who had no clue could only rely on their intuition and luck. Some people chose the closest one. Some chose the highest one. Some chose the most remote one. Everyone who entered the cave dispersed. A majestic palace stood at the peak of the mountain. The entire palace was simple and unadorned, but exuded an aura that could devour everything. This aura made many people, especially those who had studied the aura of Emperor Yu's attainment of the Tao, to choose this palace. This included the Qian Emperor and Hong Xuanji. Their figures landed in front of the palace. Other than the Qian Emperor and Hong Xuanji, there were others here as well. There were a total of 10 people who chose this palace. Are you all the fated people who came here to look for opportunities? Everyone had just landed on the ground when the door of the palace opened with a creak. Boom, boom, boom. A series of heavy footsteps sounded. Then, a woman with a body full of fat, like a mountain of meat, walked out of the palace with heavy footsteps while chewing on a greasy pork shoulder. Even with the Qian Emperor's depth and Hong Xuanji's steadiness, they were shocked by this figure. This mountain of meat did not even look human, but she could still walk. Everyone who had just entered Emperor Yu's cave did not dare to act rashly when they saw the person in the cave. If they wanted to obtain the treasure left behind by Emperor Yu, they definitely could not offend Emperor Yu's subordinates. Everyone made up their minds to observe the situation first. They wanted to see what kind of plan this person had before making their next move. I am the deacon of this palace. If you want to enter the palace to search for the treasure, you need to answer a question of mine. If your answer is correct, I will let you in. The woman, who looked like a mountain of flesh, walked in front of the crowd with heavy footsteps. A voice that smelled of oil came from her fleshy throat. Answer question, Emperor Yu's test? Everyone's hearts shook as they hurriedly recalled their knowledge. As a Confucian scholar, Hong Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief. He was very knowledgeable and was very confident in his own knowledge. Are you ready? Who's first? A terrifying smile appeared on the fleshy mountain-like woman's fleshy face. Let me do it. A figure whose entire body was emitting faint lightning took a step forward and stood in front of the mountain of flesh. People from Shunxiao Taoism, the Qian Emperor, and Hong Xuanji looked at each other and nodded secretly. In this kind of situation where they didn't know the depth of the situation, with their shrewdness, they naturally wouldn't stand out. The best way to deal with this was to wait and see. Why don't you answer the question first? Very good. My problem is... The woman, who was like a mountain of flesh, nodded and then smiled sweetly at the divine firmament Tao sect disciple. Her coy and pretentious appearance, coupled with her undulating fat, made the hearts of the crowd tremble. Lang Jun, am I beautiful? Roshan's eyes were filled with charm. He stuck out his chest and raised his buttocks, striking a seductive pose. but sticking out one's chest? Only the rippling fat on her body could be seen. Raised buttocks? Another round of fat rippling. She was 3 feet 3 and her waist was 6 feet 6. And he still dared to ask, was she beautiful? Seeing this, everyone felt their stomachs twitch violently, and they almost vomited. The Qian emperor, who had a harem of 3,000 beauties, suddenly felt that his eyes were going blind. Hearing this question, even Hong Xuanji's eyes bulged and a few veins popped out on his forehead. The man from Shunxiao Taoism who was questioned by the mountain of flesh turned green and then white. His expression was extremely strange. How should he answer this question? If he answered truthfully, this person would definitely be displeased. No matter how ugly a woman was, she would still want others to praise her for being beautiful. If he went against his conscience and said that she was beautiful, would he be pleased? This should be a test of his ability to improvise, right? The man from Shunxiao Taoism took a deep breath and resisted the urge to vomit. He forced a smile and said, "Miss is as beautiful as a flower. Of course you are beautiful." As soon as these words came out, everyone present frowned fiercely and a chill ran down their spines. As beautiful as a flower? Ha ha ha! A burst of laughter burst out and the mountain of flesh on his body shook violently. He laughed so hard that his whole body shook, as if he was very happy with this answer. Huh! The man from Shunxiao Taoism also resisted the discomfort and smiled. "You're lying." The mountain of flesh's laughter stopped abruptly. With a roar, he waved his fat palm and suddenly slapped the man from Shunxiao Taoism. Boom! The mountain of flesh seemed to be fat and stiff, but this slap was as fast as lightning and extremely powerful. What was even more frightening was that this slap was actually accompanied by surging black flames. The black flames contained a power that could devour all things. Caught off guard, the man from Shunxiao Taoism did not even have a chance to resist before he was slapped by the black flames and his soul scattered. Not even his bones were left. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Even the Qian Emperor and Hong Xuanji's faces changed. A ghost immortal was killed with a slap just like that. Who's next? The mountain of flesh did not pay attention to everyone's surprise. His eyes, which were piled up with so much fat that only a slit could be seen. He glanced at everyone and smiled sweetly. "Dear Lang Jun, am I beautiful? Not beautiful. Not only not beautiful, but also unbearably ugly." With the lesson of the man from Shunxiao Taoism, lying against one's conscience would only lead to one's death. At this time, another person thought that he had understood the true meaning and thought that Emperor Yu was testing one's integrity and honesty. So he volunteered to stand out. Unbearable? Bullshit. Hearing this, the mountain of flesh flew into a rage. With a thunderous roar, a huge black flame surged up and drowned this person. In the blink of an eye, the person who volunteered just now died without a trace. Li Yu threw in the heavenly flame from the previous world. This mountain of flesh naturally obtained the nihility devouring flame, this heavenly flame. Even if there was only one flame seed, with the power of the nihility devouring flame and the strength of the flesh mountain four extremities, it was much stronger than the martial sages of this world. Ordinary ghost immortals would die if they touched it. "Dear Lang Jun, am I beautiful?" The mountain of flesh opened his mouth and asked again. At this moment, everyone was speechless. Lie. If you say someone is lying, you'll be slapped to death. Truth. If you say someone is lying, you'll be burned to death. What do you want? Everyone in front of the palace cursed in their hearts. Fuck. Similar situations happened in front of the 26 palaces. Some old beggars asked for their belongings. Not giving? Killed with a stick. Give? Are you king richer than me? Killed with a stick. Some met a child playing marbles to see who could play accurately. Some met a perverted thief to discuss their experience in the brothel, to see who had more experience. Some met a hunter to discuss hunting skills. There were all kinds of experiences. Nothing was too strange. The only thing they had in common was that if they were slightly unlucky, they would be destroyed by a flame, a sword light, or a thunderbolt. Emperor Yu's cave was too dangerous and too strange. Chapter 190. Kill. The Qian Emperor and Hong Xuanji, who were both decisive people, would naturally not allow Roshan to continue messing around. They immediately attacked. Heavenly Death Wheel. Vacuum Palm. Atar Qian and Hong Xuanji attacked together with their strongest power. The Mountain of Flesh was just a body that Li Yu had casually refined. Even if it had a virtual soul, some power, and a fire seed of the nihility devouring flames, it was not a real person after all. It did not have a real martial arts cultivation. Roshan could not withstand the combined attack of Autark Qian and Hong Xuanji. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Master, I have tried my best. The black fire was extinguished and Roshan collapsed. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, the mountain of flesh disappeared in an instant. Whether it was the heavenly fire seed, sword chi, lightning, or the 26 bodies, they were all Li Yu's own. How could he waste them? Once they were cut down, they would be recycled. When the monsters were cut down, the bodies would be refreshed. Wasn't that a normal setting? Li Yu said that he followed the rules. The heaven-devouring Great Tao, placed in the cave abode, naturally had the settings to recover these resources. After all, Boss Li had never been a generous person. Autark Qian and Hong Xuanji were already prepared for the destruction of Roshan. In a flash, they rushed into the main hall. In the main hall, a bright ball of light floated in the air. Inside the ball of light, an ancient scroll floated up and down in the light, faintly discernible. This is Emperor Yu's treasure? Could it be that Emperor Yu's Great Tao is in the scroll? Autar Qian and Hong Xuanji looked at each other and nodded. Hong Xuanji turned around and blocked the entrance of the main hall. A heavenly death will blasted out of the door, blocking everyone who was rushing towards the door. Autark Qian jumped up and grabbed the scroll in the ball of light. Ha! Emperor Yu's Great Tao is in my hands. Autark Qian opened the scroll and glanced at it. His entire body shook, and he was dumbstruck. What kind of words are these? Why can't I read a single word? At this moment, Autark Qian began to doubt his own knowledge. Have I read too little? Did I really not study enough? All right. After Li Yu tossed in the Spirita's cultivation method, he had completely forgotten that the language of this world and the previous world were completely different. The existence of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism in this world seemed to have some kind of origin. The language and characters were exactly the same as the world Li Yu had come from before. However, the language of Xiaofeng's world was completely different. This way, no one would be able to recognize the soul race cultivation methods that were thrown into the cave abode. If he couldn't even recognize words, how could he cultivate? Li Yu guessed that the problem of going berserk while cultivating the Spirita's cultivation methods had been nipped in the cradle before it had even begun. Xuanji, stop pestering me. Let's go. Since he had already obtained this cultivation technique, even if he was illiterate, he could only think of a way to learn it in the future. Autar Qian turned around and struck out with his palm, pushing away the others who were blocking the entrance of the main hall. Together with Hong Xuanji, they charged out. Thief, don't even think about leaving. Leave behind Emperor Yu's supreme treasure. Behind them, whistling flying swords and mighty spells came crashing down from the sky. Then a huge battle unavoidably unfolded. The same scene was happening all over the cave abode. Someone had obtained a bottle of pills, but before he could even look at it, he was drowned by a bunch of spells and a group of flying swords. Someone had obtained a scroll, but before he could keep it, he was surrounded and attacked again. Boom! Kacha! Bam! In the entire cave abode, sword light crisscrossed, spells whistled, and saber light and sword shadows were locked in a fierce battle. The cave abode was huge, and there were many halls. There were all kinds of strange palace guards, all kinds of strange flames, incomparably sharp sword chi, and fierce mighty lightning. Killing the guards and fighting their way into the hall had already caused many people to die on the spot. The corpses also strangely disappeared without a trace. After killing their way into the hall, they either obtained scrolls or pills. These treasures instantly ignited the tense atmosphere, and everyone attacked without hesitation. The entire cave abode was in a mess. Fight! Fight! The harder you fight, the better. Liu could control everything in the cave abode through the system connection of the devouring heaven great way. Seeing the fight in the cave abode, he chuckled in his heart. So far, no one has found the real scam. Oh, the treasure. Seeing the black jade pendant of the devouring heaven great way, still placed in the cave abode, Liu smiled and shook his head. I wonder who is the real son of heaven. Anyway, no matter who got the devouring heaven great way, the one who benefited in the end was Liu, so there was no need to care about such a trivial matter. In the chaotic battle in the cave abode, there were countless casualties. Every dead person was directly recovered by the devouring heaven great way. So far, the devouring heaven great way had not found a host and had not begun to plunder, but it had already gained a lot. Once the battle started, it would not end in a short time. As time went by, the forces far away had also arrived. These people who came late saw the fierce battle in the cave abode and quickly understood that the treasure had been obtained. We came all the way here, but we couldn't even get a sip of soup? How could this be? So, these people who came later also joined the battle. With the addition of this group of new forces, the battle in Emperor Yu's cave abode became even more intense. Emperor Qian and Hong Xuanji gathered all their subordinates, and in addition to the other forces who had a close relationship with the great Qian dynasty, they gradually became the strongest force in Emperor Yu's cave abode. The dream god base of the most supreme Taoist sect gathered everyone from the most supreme Taoist sect and could also stand on its own. Then, the people who came later from the other countries also gathered together. Other than the most supreme Taoist sect who was not of the same mind as the great Qian dynasty, the cultivators of the other countries all gathered together. In the end, the entire Emperor Yu's cave abode had become a war between the various countries. This battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, just like the current situation in the world, no one could do anything to the other. All the major forces had gained something, and no one could snatch the gains of others. They could only restrain each other like this, and withdraw from Emperor Yu's cave abode. The great battle ended abruptly. Everyone had gained something, and everyone had suffered heavy losses. The only one who would benefit from it would be our big boss Li. There are actually so many people who died. There are people from all the major forces in the world, and these people who died were not weak in their cultivation. Liu looked at the large pile of bodies and souls that were retrieved from the devouring heaven great Tao and nodded with a smile. These people came from all the major forces in the world. As long as the system analyzed it, Liu would be able to understand a lot of information about the cultivation techniques of the major forces. But whose hands did the devouring heaven great Tao fall into? Looking through the system, Liu blinked his eyes and laughed loudly. What the heck? It was actually him who took the devouring heaven great Tao. It's actually this guy who seems to be a transmigrator. This is really interesting. Chapter 191. Your Majesty, I have tabulated the gains this time. In the space of the Gourd of Fortune, Hong Xuanji bowed and reported to the Qian Emperor. Your Majesty, we have obtained a total of 143 scrolls and 224 bottles of elixir pills from this trip to Emperor Yu's cave. The Qian Emperor nodded his head as a look of grief appeared on his face. It was all thanks to everyone's hard work that we were able to obtain such gains. Fang Xiandao, the righteous sect has suffered many casualties, and even the generals in the army have fallen. My heart aches. We are willing to die for your Majesty. When the Qian Emperor said this, everyone in the space of the Gourd of Fortune knelt down. As the Emperor of the Qian Emperor understood the way of governing. After a great battle, how could he not understand the logic of not asking about the gains but the casualties first? Of course, the grief was definitely an act. Your Majesty, all of us have handed over our gains. Does your Majesty want to take a look? Hong Xuanji presented a list to the Qian Emperor. No need. The Qian Emperor did not take the list. Instead, he turned around and looked at his subordinates in the space. I did not ask everyone to hand over the gains from Emperor Yu's cave because I covet the treasures. You are all my subjects, so your gains are my gains as well. How can I covet the gains of my subjects? The Qian Emperor opened a scroll and displayed the strange words on the scroll in front of everyone. The words that Emperor Yu wrote on the scroll are very strange. To decipher it, we need to gather the efforts of all the scholars in the world. Putting down the scroll, the Qian Emperor continued, "When I have finished deciphering it, I will definitely make a copy of the contents for all of you." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Everyone knelt down once again. Among the prostrating crowd, there was a 16 or 17-year-old handsome youth. The corner of his mouth flashed a faint sneer. The youth was called Yang En, and his title was Champion Marquis. He was a rising star in the Deqian army. Finish deciphering? Make a copy? Ha! Isn't it up to you to decide when to finish deciphering and when to make a copy? Not coveting the gains of your subjects? You make it sound nice. The Champion Marquis sneered his heart as he reached out to touch a black jade pendant with Taotai patterns. His heart was burning as he looked at everyone with a hint of mockery in his eyes. You guys didn't expect this, right? Who would have thought that the real treasure of Emperor Yu is in my hands? The Marquis Champion stood up with everyone else and silently stood to the side, coldly watching the Qian Emperor's performance. I was born with great fortune. My talent is extraordinary, and I was born extraordinary. I am the son of heaven's destiny. Thinking back to the moment the black jade pendant fell into his hand and the voice that rang out in his mind, the youth's heart was filled with pride. You son obtained son. You is, you're, of. Yang was proud and arrogant to begin with. Now that he had the supreme treasure in his hands, he was even more convinced that he was blessed by the heavens. Because he got this. It was pure luck. He kicked a stone when he was walking and the jade pendant jumped into his hand. This was like picking up a divine weapon while walking. This was the son of heaven's destiny. Of course, he didn't know that this was Li Yu's trick. This was the setting of the devouring heaven Tao. No matter who touched the stone, the jade pendant would jump into their hand automatically and say those words. The only difference was that the word son would change to young lady or junior, according to the age and gender of the host. Combined with some of his previous encounters, Yanan suddenly felt that he was truly loved by all. He was favored by the heavens and the earth, and he was blessed by fate. He was greedy and possessive. Then he was arrogant. Such a person, combined with the devouring heaven Tao, a system that could swallow anything, his future would be very exciting. Son, I think highly of you. Liu smiled and nodded when he saw this scene through the system. From the perspective of plundering resources, the Marquis Champion was a very suitable candidate. Hopefully, he wouldn't die too early. Yes, the Marquis Champion would die. No matter who it was, as long as they got the system and used the devouring heaven Tao, they would be exposed. Others would know that it was the treasure of Emperor Yu's cave. If they didn't have great strength and luck, they would be surrounded and hunted down. This was the inevitable ending. To Li Yu, it didn't matter who the host was, because the time he stayed in this world was very short. In a mere 5 to 6 years, the guy who wrote the Book of Changes would reach the Nirvana realm. If Li Yu didn't intervene and kill the so-called Son of Changes, this would be the inevitable result. Time was short. There was no time to play games. Plundering resources became Li Yu's goal. Let the Marquis Champion be. I can't be bothered with him. Putting my mind on my own cultivation is the right way to go. Li Yu cut off the connection with the system and focused on himself. The system has completely analyzed the Sun God's Tao. What I need to do next is to cultivate and reach the Sun God level as soon as possible. Finally, I will transcend the Nirvana realm and become immortal. Li Yu walked out of the cave. With one step, his figure appeared on the peak of Mount Yu. The game of plundering the treasures is over. The heavenly tomb can't be left here to be wasted. This was the cave residence of the great ancient emperor, Reverend Sun God. After the treasure was snatched, no one dared to occupy this cave residence. Li Yu waved his hand and kept the heavenly tomb back into the resource vault. The shining light on the stone door at the peak of the mountain also disappeared. The treasure of Emperor you had appeared. Naturally, the cave would be closed. After keeping the heavenly tomb, Liu returned to the secluded valley where the foxes lived. Little Ting Ting is playing with these little foxes. It's a little hard to part with them. Liu shook his head helplessly. Since that's the case, I'll stay here for the time being. It's just that I'm not used to staying in the fox cave all the time. After walking around the secluded valley, Liu chose a place with good scenery. He waved his hand, and the ancient world's heavenly tomb entered the mountain. I still need to build a house. The chi of heaven and earth circled around his fingertips. Liu reached out and pressed on it. Then, he slowly pulled it up. A quaint and elegant small attic slowly rose between the mountains and rivers. Not bad, Liu nodded. As long as I open a teleportation gate, I can connect to the heavenly tomb. It'll be convenient for me to cultivate in the future. Chapter 192. Inside the heavenly tomb, Liu sat cross-legged in a hall, planning to cultivate the techniques of this world. My physical cultivation has already reached the perfected dragon realm. Although I haven't opened my acupoints, the Tao embryo of the Khanate sacred body has cultivated the No Beginning Sutra. Coupled with the sacred body secret technique, my strength has long surpassed the requirements for a human immortal to open his acupoints. In terms of combat strength, Liu's current strength was not inferior to a human immortal at the enlightened level. It was just that he had not opened his acupoints and did not possess the characteristics of a human immortal. For a human immortal to open his acupoints, as long as he grasps the positions of the acupoints in his body and uses his chi and vital essence to open his acupoints according to the system's measurements, he will be able to circulate chi throughout his body and become one. After the system's analysis, Liu knew that there were no obstacles for him to cultivate the techniques of this world. Naturally, he did not want to delay any longer. System, send me the positions of the acupoints in my body. Following Liu's command, the system transmitted the positions of the 1296 major acupoints in his body, as well as the other 99 acupoints in each acupoint, into Liu's mind. The acupoints in my body are connected to the spirit. So, each acupoint is like a temple. There is one main god and 99 auxiliary gods. Every god was a manifestation of their own life essence. It has form but no intelligence. My will penetrates the acupoints in my body and controls everything in my body. Then let's begin. Liu took a deep breath, adjusted his body and mind, and calmed his heart. 8 gods of upper scenery, 8 gods of middle scenery, 8 gods of lower scenery. Liu circulated his vital essence, moved his chi and blood, and used his chi and vital essence to circulate his acupoints according to the system's analysis. Unknowingly, dots of light appeared in Liu's mind. Faint dots of light lit up in the endless darkness, like stars in the pitch-black night sky. The acupoints all over his body were like stars in the sky. These are the acupoints. Sensing the faint light, a smile appeared on Liu's face. Lighting up the acupoints was the first step to opening the acupoints. This step was also known as finding the knack. Everyone was different, and the position of the acupoints was slightly different. The process of finding the trick was the acupoint measurement method secretly passed down in the holy lands of the sect. Acupoint measurement method. Liu smiled. For me, the system has already marked the location of all the acupoints, so I don't need to spend any effort to measure them. With a thought, he poured his true yuan, qi, and blood qi into one of the acupoints. This was the heart orifice. Based on Liu's condition, the system came up with the method of enlightening the acupoints. The first step was to open the heart acupoint. The heart controlled the bloodline. Starting from the heart acupoint, it followed the bloodline passageway and passed through all the acupoints in his body. Actually, the system had given him a few other methods. For example, the 8 extraordinary meridians, which connected the acupoints of the whole body through meridians. There was also the chakra method, the upper, middle, lower dantian method, and so on. In the end, Liu chose the method of using his bloodline to connect all the acupoints in his body. From the bottom of his heart, Li Yu was actually more interested in the method of connecting the acupoints through meridians. The Ren and Du meridians and the 8 extraordinary meridians were all too familiar to him. However, for someone like Li Yu who had traveled all over the world, he could only choose the most versatile method. No matter how the world changed, as long as there were still humans in that world, there would definitely be hearts and blood vessels. Therefore, the method of connecting the acupoints of the whole body through the heart and blood vessels was definitely the most versatile method. Boom! Majestic chi and blood chi flowed into the heart acupoint, and a violent explosion sounded. Among the stars in the sky, a blazing red star suddenly lit up like a blazing fireball. As chi and blood chi flowed in continuously, the blazing red star became brighter. In the end, a red sun leaped into the sky, shining brightly and illuminating the void. The entire starry sky was reflected in a fiery red. The heart acupoint has been opened. Li Yu was delighted and continued to pour chi and blood chi into the heart acupoint. One acupoint could lead to 100 acupoints. Once the heart acupoint was opened, the 99 acupoints in it gradually lit up as chi and blood chi flowed through them. Then, chi and blood chi condensed and manifested in his mind. Caw! A loud crow's cry rang out. Within the fiery red sun, a 3-legged golden crow spread its huge wings and danced gracefully in the raging flames. Caw! 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 Immediately after, 99 smaller, 3-legged golden crows flew out from the sun manifested in the heart acupoint. The sun hung in the sky as hundreds of crows danced. Clang! A majestic sound rang out. As the flames raged, a huge palace rose from the sun. The largest golden crow suddenly exploded and turned into a monstrous flame. In the flames, a celestial emperor wearing a crimson imperial robe and an imperial crown appeared, sitting high on the dragon throne. The other 99 smaller golden crows also exploded and reformed into the civil and military officials under the celestial emperor. His mind had manifested and the heart acupoint had been opened. After the heart acupoint was opened, the flow of blood in his body was completely under his mind's control. As long as Li Yu's mind moved, he could control the flow of blood in any part of his body. For example, he could make the blood in a certain part more abundant. With a rumble, the blood surged like a raging tide, and the raging flames in the heart acupoint grew even more violent. This huge amount of chi and blood chi suddenly poured into the liver. He was facing the wall with his own thoughts. This chi and blood chi poured into the liver, which was the next acupoint. In the liver acupoint, the sky was filled with green chi, and a huge tree soared into the sky. The sky-connecting tree. Around this sky-connecting tree, there were 99 smaller sky-connecting trees standing tall. Then, the sky-connecting trees transformed, and the liver god appeared. In the huge green wood palace, and celestial emperor wearing a green imperial robe sat on the dragon throne. Below him were also civil and military officials. The liver acupoint was opened. Then the 5 viscera, 6 bowels, limbs, bones, head, and torso opened one by one. Divine palaces appeared one after another, and gods appeared. Clang! A mighty heavenly sound shook the world. In the heavenly tomb, Li Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, his body blooming with brilliant divine light. In the endless divine light, brilliance flowed, thousands of auspicious clouds, and thousands of auspicious chi. Majestic heavenly palaces stood in the brilliance. 129,600 gods sat in the heavenly palaces, exuding a monstrous divine aura and endless divine light. At this moment, the endless heavenly palaces appeared around Li Yu's body. There are 100,000 acupoints in the body, and there are gods in each acupoint. Li Yu muttered softly and stood up. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud sounds burst out from the acupoints all over his body. The sound was like thunder, shaking the world. Chi flows through the body as one. With a thought, the phenomenon around his body disappeared instantly. The chi and blood chi in his body converged into one, and he looked like an ordinary boy next door. One could no longer see his chi and blood chi that was like the scorching sun. However, Li Yu's skin was as white as jade, and even the pores on his skin had shrunk so much that they could not be seen. Flawless chi and blood chi. The human immortal body is already a flawless body. Chapter 193. Big brother, a big sister is looking for you. Li Yu finished his enlightenment and left the heavenly tomb. Just as he walked out of the room in the small attic, he heard little Ting Ting shouting excitedly in the courtyard. Big sister. Li Yu raised his eyebrows, smiled, and walked out of the attic. In the courtyard, little Ting Ting held the hand of a young girl in a white dress and walked up with a smile. There was also a group of little foxes jumping around happily next to him. I'm concubine Yuan. The white-clothed girl smiled and nodded at Li Yu. Her pretty face was bright and moving, but her body faintly emitted an icy aura, as if her body contained a huge amount of icy power. I haven't been here for a long time. Today, I heard from Tu Lao that there was a guest in the valley, and it's a young man with profound knowledge. So, I came to see you. Concubine Yuan smiled and looked at Li Yu, nodding in admiration. You have a dignified appearance and outstanding charm. You are indeed extraordinary. The innate sacred body was a Tao fetus and cultivated a human immortal body, causing Li Yu's body to be even stronger and more perfect. Naturally, he was worthy of the evaluation of a dignified appearance. Appearance is just a superficial appearance. It's not enough to reach the apex. Li Yu smiled and waved his hand indifferently. His eyes swept over concubine Yuan, and he was secretly surprised. What a strong, icy power. Monarch Sweetie Fox, one of the 8 great demon immortals in the world. After her demon body was released and reincarnated, she cultivated for more than 10 years. Her strength is probably stronger than when she was a demon immortal. Tu Lao and I are old friends, and I'm also very concerned about the Fox clan, who are wholeheartedly kind. Concubine Yuan looked at little Ting Ting, who was playing with a group of little foxes, and smiled. Your sister is so congenial with them. I'm sure you siblings are righteous people. You flatter me. Li Yu chuckled. Righteous? If you knew how I cheated people, you wouldn't say such words. However, apart from the past Amitabha Sutra, these foxes had nothing worth Li Yu's attention. Xiao Ting Ting was having fun with the little foxes, so Li Yu just let them be. Originally, Old Tu wanted to invite this little brother to teach these little fellows how to read. However, when I saw your sister having so much fun with the little fellows, I gave up on this idea. Imperial concubine Yuan looked at the little fellows playing around and shook her head helplessly. My parents don't teach disciples. Now that the little ones are so familiar with you, it won't be easy to teach them. Looks like I'll have to find a gentleman. Find a gentleman? Li Yu pointed at the little fox and chuckled. I'm afraid we'll have to find someone with more guts and a tougher personality to subdue them. Yes, you're right. However, I've already found a candidate. Concubine Yuan smiled and nodded, waving at Li Yu. I'll be leaving first. We still have to pick up that gentleman. With that, Imperial concubine Yuan bid farewell and left. The gentleman who will teach the little foxes? Li Yu looked at Imperial concubine Yuan's departing figure, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The person Imperial concubine Yuan found is Hong Xuanji's illegitimate son, right? He's the awesome person who wrote the Book of Changes in the Future and advanced to the Nirvana realm in 6 years. Li Yu still felt that the speed of that as cultivation was really terrifying. With Li Yu's resources, the aptitude of the innate divine body's Tao embryo, and the supreme technique of the No Beginning Sutra, Li Yu spent nearly 10 years to complete the Dragon Realm, which was equivalent to the strength of a beginner human immortal. Although the cultivation methods of the two worlds were different, and there was no comparison. However, the speed of becoming an immortal in 6 years, in any world, was enough to make people tremble in fear. Will that Hong Yi be brought over by Imperial concubine Yuan tonight? I like to see what kind of person he is. Liu smiled and turned to return to the attic. His physical cultivation was already complete. As long as he swallowed the huge life source of the crocodile ancestor, Liu was confident that he could be reborn from a drop of blood very quickly. There are thousands of changes. It was not impossible even to break the vacuum. However, the cultivation of the spirit was a little troublesome. System, compile a copy of the cultivation experiment results of the past Amitabha Sutra and give it to me. After obtaining the Longevity Heavenly Book and Zhaohua Heavenly Scripture, Liu finally decided to cultivate the past Amitabha Sutra. Because Liu's innate divine body's Tao embryo cultivated the No Beginning Sutra, he could finally cultivate the ability to control the river of time. The No Beginning Sutra could cultivate two great supernatural powers, the Great Immortal Technique. The No Beginning could turn all power into nothingness and return everything to beginning. When hit by the No Beginning Technique, time would flow backward and return to the origin, returning to chaos. The passage of time would accelerate the passage of time. Under the erosion of time, all things would eventually return to silence. When hit by the passage of time technique, as long as it was not eternal and indestructible, it would definitely return to silence. With this foundation, the past Amitabha Sutra, which was also related to time, was very suitable for Liu to cultivate. After accepting the cultivation experiment results transmitted by the system, Liu looked at them for a while, shook his head, and sighed slightly. This experiment results are only useful for reference. It's not very useful in practice. The cultivation of the spirit was the cultivation of the mind and thoughts. How complicated was a person's mind? Every minute, every second, how many thoughts would appear in his mind? This kind of cultivation of the spirit could only rely on oneself. Brother, sister concubine Yuan has invited a mister for the little foxes. Let's go take a look. At this time, little Tingting's voice sounded outside the door. That person is already here. Liu smiled, got up, and walked out of the room. He followed little Tingting to see that fierce person who would be extremely powerful in the future. After walking out of the attic, Liu and little Tingting came to the vicinity of the cave. It was already late. A bonfire was lit outside the cave. Concubine Yuan was talking to Tu Lao with a young man in green, and there was a group of little foxes around the bonfire. The mister was here, and the days of the little foxes playing freely were gone forever. The group of little foxes hung their heads listlessly, and, under Tu Lao's request, they reluctantly bowed to the young man in green. Are you the mister that sister concubine Yuan invited? Little Tingting ran over and stared at the young man in green for a while, then curled her lips. There's nothing special about him. I'm Hong Yi. Although I've read some books, I'm just an ordinary scholar, so there's nothing special about me. Hong Yi smiled indifferently and glanced at little Tingting. This little girl, is she also a student that I want to teach? Who needs you to teach? Little Tingting glared at Hong Yi unhappily and was about to refute, but she was interrupted by Liu. Tingting, don't be rude. Liu stopped little Tingting's nonsense and nodded at Hong Yi. My sister is rude. Please don't blame her, young Master Hong. Raising his eyes to look at Hong Yi, Liu realized that he was just an ordinary young scholar. Although his foundation was not bad, there was no sign of outstanding talent. Such an ordinary scholar became an immortal in 6 years? He really couldn't see anything special about him. Liu secretly shook his head in his heart. Your sister is straightforward by nature, and children's words carry no harm. How can I take offense? Hong Yi cupped his hands and bowed to Liu. Hong Yi greets brother. My sister has been spoiled by me, so I'll have to trouble Mr. Hong to discipline her strictly in the future. Seeing that little Tingting seemed to have gone crazy and started to show signs of being undisciplined and out of control, Liu simply asked Hong to teach little Tingting as well. Then, Hong Yi's teaching path began with sorting out the books in the cave. Liu didn't interfere, and the book containing the past Amitabha Sutra also fell into Hong Yi's hands. The world seemed to have changed a lot, but also seemed to have never changed. The future was already unpredictable. Chapter 194. Shaqing Pass. This was the border between Deqian and Yunmeng. Between the mountains and valleys, there was a huge city. On top of the city, there were huge blood-red war flags fluttering in the wind. An iron-blooded aura permeated the surroundings. In the city, there was a luxurious mansion facing the south. This was the mansion of the Marquis Champion. That old fart actually gave me the gourd of fortune. The Marquis Champion was lying on a soft couch with a white tiger skin. Beside him was a group of beautiful women. Some were serving him tea and wine, some were peeling fruits for him, and some were massaging his shoulders amidst his endless fortune. The Marquis Champion was holding a palm-sized green gourd. He frowned and looked at it for a while before keeping it. Just a gourd of fortune, and you want to calm me down? The corners of the Marquis Champion's mouth curled into a sneer. Old man, let me take your seat. With my destiny, the throne of the Qian Emperor will definitely be mine. All of you leave. The Marquis Champion waved his hand, and the group of beautiful women left. Reaching out, he took out the black jade pendant with Tao-Dai patterns and laughed. Old fart, you guys didn't expect me to have such great luck, right? When I was 5 years old, a meteor fell from the sky, and the Pan Huang sacred sword came to me. Now, even Emperor Yu's supreme treasure has come to me. If I am not the son of destiny, who is? The Marquis Champion's hands shook, and a huge amount of blood essence was poured into the Tao-Tai jade pendant. With a surge of blood essence, the jade pendant emitted a black light, and a pitch-black Tao-Tai beast appeared. PFFF. The Marquis Champion was prepared. He bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. With his own will, he rushed into the black Tao-Tai. Roar! An earth-shattering roar sounded in his divine soul. With the blood and will, the Marquis Champion immediately took control of the Tao-Tai jade pendant. My Tao is called heaven-devouring. Food is the most important thing for people. What living beings in this world don't eat? Devouring is the instinct of all living beings. It is the supreme, righteous Tao. A vast voice sounded in the Marquis Champion's mind. Then, the plants absorbed the sunlight, rain, dew, and the vitality of the earth, and grew continuously. Cows and sheep eating grass, wolves eating sheep. Countless scenes flashed through the Marquis of Champion's mind, and a complete food chain appeared one by one. Heaven-devouring great Tao, devouring all things in order to nourish oneself? Ha ha, good. It is indeed a supreme great Tao. After a while, the Marquis Champion, who had received all the information, laughed wildly in joy. Not only can it increase one's abilities, but can also replenish one's body with whatever one eats. The heaven-devouring Grand Tao is indeed incomparably powerful. It's simply too suitable for me. Reaching out, the Marquis of Champion took out the gourd of good fortune and smiled. He wanted to see if this heaven-devouring great Tao was really that powerful. The creation gourd formed its own void. It can store items and travel through the void. However, the divine soul of a ghost immortal could only be used 3 times a day. If I use the heaven-devouring great Tao to devour, I will be able to control this ability. The Marquis of Champion was arrogant and overbearing, but he knew how to make a choice. He immediately activated the heaven-devouring great Tao, intending to devour the gourd of fortune. Oh, the pitch-black Tao-Tai materialized, opening up a gigantic mouth that was like a black hole. With an endless amount of devouring power, it devoured the entire gourd of fortune. Rumble! His mind shook violently, and a clear light bloomed. In the next moment, the Marquis Champion immediately sensed a huge space. It's much smaller than the creation gourd. However, this is completely my own power. With a wave of his hand, the wine bottle on the table in front of him disappeared instantly. With another wave of his hand, the wine bottle returned to the table. Ha ha! Very good, very good. The heaven-devouring Grand Tao is indeed a supreme great Tao. It's really to my liking. I am indeed the son of heaven. With a flash of his figure, a clear light flashed, and the Marquis Champion's figure disappeared. In the next moment, the Marquis Champion appeared outside the main hall. Void travel. Although using this power consumes a lot of energy, as my cultivation grows, I will be able to travel through the void at will. Ha ha! With this ability, where can I not go in the world? With a flash of clear light, the Marquis Champion returned to the main hall. The heaven-devouring Grand Tao is so powerful. I must find more treasures to devour. The Marquis Champion's eyes lit up as he looked outside the city. The Western Cloud Empire and the profound Heaven Holy Land have many good things. I can obtain military merits and devour treasures. It's really suitable. However, the Marquis Champion frowned slightly, although I'm already a martial saint now. However, if I want to sweep through the Western Cloud Empire, my strength is still not enough. I must increase my strength as soon as possible. I'll just devour that thing that doesn't obey my control. When he was 5 years old, a meteor fell from the sky and the Pan Huang sacred sword fell into his hands. However, this sacred sword used courage, wisdom, benevolence, and integrity as its source of power. It was really not compatible with the Marquis Champion's temperament. Until now, the Marquis Champion could only use this sword when he was in danger. Usually, it would not listen to his orders. What's the use of this thing that doesn't listen to orders? It's better to just devour it and turn into my own strength. In this world, strength is the foundation. Therefore, one's own strength is the foundation. External objects are not enough. With a wave of his hand, a crack appeared in the void and a sword light whizzed out. A 1-meter-long sword floated in front of the Marquis Champion. This treasure sword was square in shape. The 4 edges were straight and did not deviate at all. It seemed to be the manifestation of the concept of integrity in the world. The sword had 4 edges, and all sorts of scenes were engraved on them. One side depicted mountains, rivers, grass, and trees. One side depicted the sun, moon, and stars. One side depicted humanity and education. One side depicted fishing, herding, and farming. Courage, wisdom, benevolence, integrity. The grand sacred sword had a myriad of scenes. Pan Huang's sacred sword. You recognize me as your master, but do not let me use you. The Marquis Champion looked at the Pan Huang sacred sword before him. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Since that is the case, then don't blame me. Roar, a huge Taotai image appeared. It opened its pitch-black mouth and swallowed the Pan Huang sacred sword. Then, a huge amount of energy instantly rushed into the Marquis Champion's body. Boom! The vast chi and blood surged like a raging flame. The Marquis Champion's body was scarlet red like blood. He looked drunk and nearly fainted from the impact of this huge amount of energy. Damn it, such strong strength! The Marquis Champion immediately circulated his chi and blood, changing his blood and cleansing his marrow. Not long after, the Marquis Champion's body exploded. His chi and blood radiated. The blood all over his body became crystal clear and heavy like mercury, refining my marrow like frost and refining my blood like mercury. I am already a peak martial sage. Ha ha! The heaven-devouring Tao is indeed powerful. The Marquis Champion laughed and stopped. He was extremely satisfied with the heaven-devouring Tao. However, it seemed like he had obtained a huge benefit, but it was actually a trap. This fellow is indeed suitable for the heaven-devouring Tao. Not bad, not bad. Seeing the new Pan Huang sacred sword and creation gourd in the resource warehouse, Liu nodded in satisfaction. The Marquis Champion is not bad. Continue to deceive them. Chapter 195. Young man, actually you've been cheated. Liu glanced at the 2 new treasures in the resource warehouse, and a smile appeared on his face. Actually, the Marquis of Champion had already been cheated underground. Was it the so-called storage space of function that came with the resource vault? He didn't even have to open it up completely. He just had to open it up a little for him to use. As for teleportation, the Marquis of Champion thought that it was his own ability. Actually, this was just an illusion. In essence, the Marquis of Champion had used his own power to exchange for a one-time teleportation skill. I don't really like the Marquis of Champion. It's fine if his personality isn't likable, but he even opened such a huge harem. It's really hateful. Liu pursed his lips gloomily. I haven't even gotten a single one until now. You actually opened such a huge harem? Who else would I cheat if not you? Young man, someone will come to snatch your treasures very soon. The treasure hunt is about to begin. In exchange for the Pan Huang sacred sword, Liu had used up some energy to help the Marquis of Champion reach the peak of martial sage. This way, the Marquis of Champion's strength would be much stronger, and the treasure hunt would be even more exciting. The energy needed to help the Marquis of Champion reach the peak was actually very easy to solve. So many people had died in the battle at Emperor Yu's cave. Just take some energy from any one of them, and it would be enough to deal with it. That's why the business of cheating people is the most profitable. Liu was naturally very happy to have obtained 2 treasures so easily. The creation gourd was fine, as it was just a spatial equipment. But the Pan Huang sacred sword was incredible. If the treasures refined by the ancient Holy Emperor could unleash their true power, even a creator with 7 lightning tribulations would be at a disadvantage if they were hit by the sword. Of course, in terms of power alone, Liu still didn't care about such things. The sacred weapons in the Azure Thearch's tomb were still moldy in the warehouse. Any one of them would be no weaker than the Pan Huang sacred sword. What Liu really cared about was the will in the Pan Huang sacred sword. The refining methods of this world can actually be used like this: courage, wisdom, benevolence, integrity. To be able to refine such a concept into a weapon, from another point of view, this was already sword intent. System: analyze the forging method of the Pan Huang sacred sword. In this world, treasures at the level of Pan Huang sacred sword were known as Holy Emperor divine weapons. Although there were many different kinds of treasures, many of them were not used for battle. Just because they were treasures left behind by the Holy Emperor, they were collectively known as the Holy Emperor's divine artifacts. The jade pendant with Taotai pattern that Liu used to deceive others was the Tao confirming treasure of Emperor Yu. It was also a Holy Emperor's divine artifact. In terms of lethality, Liyu's saint weapons were much stronger than most of the Holy Emperor's divine artifacts. However, he did not possess such a conceptual will. Analysis complete. The courage, wisdom, benevolence, and uprightness in Pan Huang's holy sword were imprinted with Pan Huang's own divine will. Hearing this conclusion, Liu nodded. Martial will, spirit will. This is the key to cultivation in this world. In the past few days, Liu had been comprehending the cultivation methods of this world. Although he had the system to analyze, he still needed to do it himself to truly comprehend it. The system was just a tool. He could rely on it, but he could not rely on it. Therefore, what is written on paper is ultimately shallow. Knowing this, I have to castrate. Oh no, I have to do it personally. If he wanted to experience martial will, he had to really go deep into it. At this time, Liu suddenly realized that he had not cultivated any combat skills until now. What the heck? So, I haven't cultivated any combat skills until now. I've been acting cool and have never been beaten to death. This is really too amazing. Liu smiled bitterly and shook his head. All this time, I've been relying on the system to exchange one-time skills to act cool. I actually neglected the fact that I haven't cultivated any combat skills. Fortunately, I've realized it now. Otherwise, I would have suffered sooner or later. What should I learn? Liu glanced at the system's resource library. Grand Void Handprint, Taishu, Sword Chi. Great Sun, Heavenly Furnace. 9 slashes of the Demon Emperor. No beginning technique. Seeing the densely packed combat skills inside, Liu actually felt somewhat at a loss for what to do. In the future, I will have to travel to different worlds and come in contact with more and more combat skills. Therefore, I have to choose a combat skill that is inclusive and has great potential for development. With this thought, one of the 9 esotericas, fighting, leaped into Liu's eyes. Battle Saint Technique. This was a secret technique that specialized in combat, known as one technique to derive 10,000 techniques. Any skill could be derived from the battle saint technique. It was very inclusive. As for the attack power, it was even more so. If combined with the all esotericas of the 9 esotericas, it could deal 10 times the damage. The power was unimaginable. Lin Bing Do Zhe, advance in formation. The 9 esotericas were all recorded by the system. It seemed that using the 9 esotericas as a combat skill was already very perfect. Lin was a summoning skill. Bing was a weapon control skill. Fighting was the battle saint technique. Swordsman was a recovery skill. All was 10 times the damage. Formation was a formation. Lie was a talisman. Forwarding was insight and prediction. And Xing was a supreme footwork skill. After learning the 9 esotericas, he had more than enough combat skills. System, teach me the 9 esotericas cultivation method. After making up his mind, Liu began to learn the 9 esotericas. Kill. At this moment, the Marquis champion also began his conquest. The war flag fluttered. The cavalry clashed. Rumble. The Marquis champion was dressed in martial attire, holding a pitch-black spear in his hand. Monstrous ferocity emanated from the spear, frightening one's soul. The Marquis champion, whose strength had greatly increased, charged unhindered in the army formation. The Yuan Ming cavalry was soon defeated. Victory! 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 When the great Qian army saw the Marquis champion's peerless demeanor, their cheers were like a tsunami. Marquis champion, do you dare to fight me? In the distance, a pitch-black stream of light whizzed over. The pure and deep darkness was like the pitch-black night sky. Within the black chi, a beautiful woman with a graceful figure was glaring at the Marquis of Champion with furrowed brows. Sky Snake King. The Marquis champion was about to return to the army formation when he suddenly heard this loud shout. He quickly turned his head to look at the woman who was flying over with a strange look in his eyes. They say that you are a femme fatale. Sky Snake King, you really live up to your reputation. Her appearance is so beautiful, and her figure is so exquisite. This Marquis's heart is itching to see her. Why don't we go to bed and have a good battle? Ha ha! In the army formation, the great Qian soldiers immediately burst into laughter. Damn it! The Sky Snake King gritted his teeth, his eyes were cold, and a stream of black chi rose from his hand. This stream of black chi turned into a ferocious demon god. Mahakala Demon God. The moment the gigantic demon god appeared, its torrential, ferocious aura shook the surroundings. The demon god waved his gigantic palm and slapped down at the Marquis champion. Damn it, this woman is actually so strong? The Marquis champion was shocked and hurriedly turned his horse around to flee. However, he could no longer escape. Chapter 196. Boom! No matter how fast the horse was, it could not be faster than flying. Before the Marquis champion could run a few steps, a huge black palm print landed on his head. Damn it! The Marquis of Champion let out a strange cry as he stomped his foot and jumped off the horse. Bang! The huge palm print landed on the ground and exploded with a loud bang. The ground shook violently and a huge pit was formed. Damn it, so strong! The Heavenly Snake King must be a ghost immortal expert who had passed the lightning tribulation. Even if the Marquis Champion's cultivation had improved greatly and reached the peak of the martial sage realm, he was only one step away from the human immortal realm. However, compared to this ghost immortal, the gap was still too big. Run! The Marquis Champion was naturally domineering when he needed to be strong, but when it was time to run, he would not be careless. Looking up, the Marquis Champion's expression changed again. He cursed in his heart. This woman is so ruthless. At this moment, the Mahakala demon god was chasing him relentlessly. The Heavenly Snake King stood between the Marquis Champion and the Qian army, preventing him from returning to the army. If it was a ghost immortal who had not gone through the lightning tribulation, facing the army's murderous aura and huge blood chi, he would not be able to unleash the power of his spells. However, for a ghost immortal like the Heavenly Snake King, the army's blood chi was almost useless. However, the Heavenly Snake King was still blocking his way, not allowing him to return to the army. He did not even give him a chance. Bitch, sooner or later, I will take you into my harem and make you obedient. The Marquis Champion glared at the Heavenly Snake King. A crystal light flashed, and the Marquis Champion's figure disappeared. The Marquis Champion's sudden disappearance shocked the Heavenly Snake King. The ghost immortal's consciousness swept out and clearly felt the vibration of the void. So he broke through the void and escaped? A mere martial sage can break through the void? Looks like this kid has some secrets. Specks of starlight blossomed in the sky, Snake King's eyes, as if a galaxy was circulating. Unfortunately, you can't escape. The great dark heavenly devil god clasped his hands together and held the Heavenly Snake King in his palms. The black gas that filled the sky shook violently as the great dark heavenly devil god transformed into a beam of black light and soared into the sky. I have already passed the fourth lightning tribulation. I can create a world with a single thought. How can a mere void escape from me? With a flash of clear light, the Marquis of Champion appeared on a huge mountain. This is Pillar of Heaven's Mountains? The Marquis of Champion furrowed his brows when he saw the towering mountain in front of him. He actually ran this far? The Marquis Champion tightly grasped the long spear in his hand. When he thought about how he was forced to flee in a sorry state by the Heavenly Serpent King and lost a lot of face, he felt a wave of anger in his heart. Heavenly Snake King, just you wait. You've already been reserved as a member of my harem. You can't run away. Sooner or later, there will be a time when you will be pleasuring me. You're courting death. Just as the Marquis Champion finished muttering to himself, he suddenly heard an extremely furious roar. Black chi that blotted out the sky soared into the sky. In the deep darkness, an incomparably huge figure with boundless divine might appeared. Tao Sovereign Xiantian. The Marquis Champion's expression changed drastically when he saw this incomparably huge deity. After having fought with the Western Cloud Empire for so many years, how could the Marquis Champion not have heard of the origin deity of the profound Heaven Holy Land? This deity that represented the world's darkness origin was the image of the deity that everyone in the profound Heaven Holy Land cultivated and visualized. Brat, you're dead meat. The Heavenly Serpent King stared coldly at the Marquis Champion as a pitch-black Datura flower appeared in his hand. A flower, a leaf, a world with a single thought. A graceful chant came out of the Heavenly Serpent King's mouth. Thousands of thoughts rushed out of his body and intertwined in the air to form a formation diagram. Within the formation diagram, the thousands of thoughts shone with dazzling brilliance. However, in the center of the formation diagram, where the brilliance was the strongest, there was a tiny speck of darkness condensed. This speck of darkness was very small, but infinitely deep. Boom! An overwhelming amount of darkness erupted from the center of the formation diagram. Like a raging tide, the endless darkness instantly drowned the Marquis Champion. It's actually the Dark Datura canopy. The Marquis Champion only felt that he had fallen into endless darkness. Even his own consciousness seemed to be frozen. Canopy. The huge Tao Sovereign Xiantian clasped his hands together and held the Marquis Champion in his hands. Then, he spat out a profound and unfathomable voice. As soon as this voice came out, the endless darkness suddenly contracted. The endless darkness accumulated and condensed. The Marquis Champion found that he was like a bug frozen in amber, unable to move at all. Damn it, I've been sealed by her. The Marquis Champion's heart surged with anger. Bitch, you think you can defeat me like this? Just you wait. Heaven-devouring great Tao. Give me him? No, it can only devour things that have no resistance. This kind of offensive magic can't be devoured. The Marquis Champion was just about to activate the Taotai Jade Pendant, but the Jade Pendant did not respond to his call. It only sent him some information. It can't be devoured? Then, I can only run. The Marquis champion fiercely gritted his teeth. Bitch, you didn't expect that my void travel ability did not come from a magic treasure, but from my own strength. You can't seal me. The next time we meet, I'll teach you a lesson. Boom! A crystal clear light flashed slightly, and the Marquis champion's figure instantly disappeared into the endless darkness. Kid, you're dead. After the dark Dachira canopy shrank, it turned into a black crystal the size of fingernail. The Sky Snake King held the black crystal in his hand and was about to punish the Marquis champion when he suddenly realized that the Marquis champion's figure had already disappeared without a trace. Damn it, how did he escape? The dark Dachira canopy sealed the space and froze the void. How did he escape? The Sky Snake King spread out his consciousness and searched everywhere, but he could no longer find any clues. Bastard, consider yourself lucky. The Sky Snake King snorted angrily and turned to fly away. As for the Marquis champion, damn it, why am I so unlucky? Traveling through the void and stepping out, it's actually a cliff. The Marquis champion's figure rapidly fell down the cliff with the whistling sound of the wind in his ears. The bottomless cliff was at least 1,000 feet high. If he fell from this height, even a peak martial sage would definitely be smashed into meat paste. Just now, he had used all his strength to activate the void travel ability to escape from the dark Dachira canopy. Now, the Marquis champion could no longer use the void travel ability. Swoosh! A black shadow flashed in front of the Marquis champion. The Marquis champion's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He quickly grabbed the black shadow and realized that it was actually a huge mountain vine. Haha! Indeed, the heavens are on my side. The Marquis champion was overjoyed. With the help of the mountain vine, he recovered his strength. The long spear in his hand stabbed heavily into the cliff. With this resistance, he stopped falling. This Marquis is blessed with good fortune. Indeed, I can turn misfortune into fortune. Stopping at the top of the cliff, the Marquis champion scanned the surroundings. When he saw the right side of the cliff, his eyes widened and a trace of ecstasy appeared in his eyes. It's actually the divine stone spirit embryo? This Marquis is indeed the son of heaven. I am indeed favored by luck. Liu saw this scene through the system connection and curled his lips disapprovingly. Young man, you think too much. You have the life of a child of fortune. Chapter 197. I am indeed blessed by providence. The Marquis champion stored the divine stone spirit embryo in his storage space, feeling very happy. I suffered a small setback at the hands of Sky Snake King and immediately received such a precious treasure as compensation. Providence is indeed on my side. Even though he was hanging on the cliff and in a dilemma, the Marquis champion was still in high spirits. When he recovered some vital essence and blood, he could use short-distance void travel. The Marquis champion stepped off the cliff and pulled out his spear. His figure flashed as he activated void travel and teleported to the bottom of the cliff. This void travel ability allows me to accurately locate my position within my vision range. If it exceeds my vision range, I can only teleport disorderly. The Marquis champion's figure appeared at the bottom of the cliff. He looked up at the towering cliff and rejoiced. Being teleported to the bottom of a cliff is still all right. If I were to be teleported into the void or lava, it would be troublesome. It would be great if I could also cultivate the path of the spirit. Thinking of this, the Marquis champion's heart was filled with resentment. Old fart. When I was just born, you used a technique to fuse my spirit and body together, making it impossible for my spirit to escape. Are you trying to sever my spirit cultivation path? As the illegitimate son of Autarch Qian, the Marquis champion had no respect for this cheap father of his, because he was a reincarnated soul from another world. He was born with his past memories and naturally did not truly acknowledge Autarch Qian. But you didn't expect me to have such providence, right? With the heaven-devouring great Tao. As long as I devour a few ghost immortals, my spirit power will automatically advance to the ghost immortal realm." The Marquis champion sneered and sat down beside a huge rock at the bottom of the cliff. He waved his hand and released the divine stone spirit embryo. This was a huge stone egg that was taller than a person. It was naturally exquisite with 9 orifices. Natural patterns that resonated with heaven and earth covered the entire stone egg. An enormous vitality was being nurtured within the stone egg. It is indeed the divine stone spirit embryo, and it is one that is about to take shape. As long as it is baptized by lightning, the spirit embryo will break out of its shell. It will be born with the cultivation of a human immortal. The Marquis champion's eyes lit up as he looked at the stone egg. He became very eager. "Even if the spirit embryo breaks out of its shell and I refine it, I will at most have a human immortal clone. I am now only one step away from the human immortal stage. If the heaven-devouring Grand Tao devours the divine stone spirit embryo, I will be able to advance to the human immortal stage." The Marquis champion reached out to touch the divine stone spirit embryo. Sensing the surging life force within the stone egg, the Marquis champion came to a decision. My avatar could still be snatched away by others. Advancing to the worldly immortal stage is the foundation. Heaven-devouring Great Tao, devour it. The image of a giant Taotai emerged, and a black hole appeared, swallowing the divine stone in one gulp. Then, the divine stone spirit embryo was in Liyu's hands. The champion Marquis wants to ascend to the human immortal stage? Originally, the Marquis of Champion had put the divine stone spirit embryo into his storage space, which meant that it had fallen into Liyu's hands. This was because the storage space was a part of the resource vault. Liyu was not in a hurry to make a move on the Godstone spirit embryo. He did not expect the Marquis champion to deliver the Godstone spirit embryo to him in the blink of an eye. "Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I won't hold back." Liu glanced at the divine stone spirit embryo in the resource vault and smiled. "Then I'll give you some benefits. The stronger you are, the more ruthless you'll plunder. This is exactly what I want." The Marquis champion had refined the Taotai Jade Pendant, which meant that he had become the host of the heaven-devouring Great Tao. His entire soul and all his memories were under the control of the system. The Marquis champion cultivates the creation path. The martial Tao cultivation method that Autarch Qian imparted to him actually only has the method to awaken 108 apertures. Liu was surprised, but felt that it was only natural. It was still unknown whether the creation path inheritance that the Qian Emperor had obtained was complete. More importantly, even if someone like the Qian Emperor had grasped more apertures, how could he not have left something behind? 108 apertures. Although it's not worth mentioning in my opinion, it's still a top-notch worldly immortal technique. "Young man, I'll let you become a worldly immortal. You better be a good boy delivering treasures to me." The battle for the treasures in Emperor Yu's cave had left many heroes dead. The heaven-devouring Great Tao had retrieved those corpses, but Liu did not have time to make use of them. System: extract the souls and decompose them into pure soul energy. Record all the knowledge into the resource vault. Decompose the corpses and extract vital essence to pass it to the Taotai. Help the Marquis champion open his apertures. Leaving the Marquis champion behind, Liu placed his thoughts on the divine stone spirit embryo. Arriving at the heavenly tomb, Liu released the divine stone spirit embryo. Seeing this huge stone egg that was taller than a person, Liu's eyeballs spun wildly, and he suddenly had an idea. Heaven and earth nurtured, the stone is born. This thing seems to be very similar to a legend. Dong Shunk Divine Continent, Ao Lai Country, Mountain of Flowers and Fruits. With a swipe of his hand, a ball of blood that resembled liquid gold appeared. A faint howl of an ape could be heard. It was arrogant and unyielding, fighting against the heavens and the earth. Unyielding and unyielding. "You carry the load. I'll lead the horse." Liu hummed a strange tune and pressed his hand, sending the ball of golden blood into the stone egg. "There's a monkey called Kong in this world. Now, I'll create a monkey called Wu. You kill Kong, and take his Tao fruit of longevity. You'll be Wukong. Ha! Of course, Li would not create a truly unruly monkey that would not even listen to him. This ball of golden blood definitely carried the mark of loyalty. The stone egg had yet to be born and only had a trace of instinctive intelligence. At this moment, after the ball of golden blood entered, the stone egg's instinctive intelligence and the battle will of the sacred battle ape's bloodline merged, giving birth to a brand new intelligence. A monkey that was absolutely loyal to Li Yu. According to the rules of this world, the birth of the divine stone spirit embryo must be tempered with lightning. What was this thing called lightning? I have plenty of it. He pointed with his finger, and a thunderbolt exploded. He took out the power of lightning from the lightning pool in the immortal abode. Huge bolts of lightning were like flashing silver lightning dragons. Boom! Rumble! Bolts of lightning continuously bombarded the stone egg. The lightning tempered it, and the lightning baptized it. Inside the huge divine stone spirit embryo, a huge amount of vitality violently surged. Thump! 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 Heavy heartbeats sounded like war drums. Dazzling golden light blossomed from the naturally interwoven patterns on the divine stone spirit embryo. Vaguely, a huge ape's howl sounded. Boom! With a loud explosion, the divine stone spirit embryo suddenly exploded. Brilliant golden light suddenly blossomed, and the dazzling radiance illuminated the entire heavenly tomb. Whoa! Amidst the golden light, a tall and muscular ape covered in golden fur waved its arms and howled at the sky. Apart from its golden fur, the ape's body was no different from a human's. A moment later, the golden light receded. The ape stopped howling and turned to Li Yu. The ape walked up to Li Yu and bowed respectfully on the ground, with a pair of bright golden eyes filled with a layer of foam. Good, good, good. The bloodline of the sacred battle ape is indeed powerful. Li Yu looked at the golden-haired ape and saw the vast and mighty chi and blood all over his body. He smiled and nodded. Thy name is Wu. From now on, thou shalt follow me. Many thanks for the name, Supremacy. The golden ape knelt in front of Li Yu and kowtowed heavily. Ha! Not bad, not bad. After the construction of the merchant city stronghold is completed, Monkey will be my hired thug guarding the stronghold. Li Yu patted the ape's head and laughed heartily. Chapter 198. Since he's a fighter, I'll have to equip him. Li Yu glanced at the resource warehouse and took out a rod from the sacred weapon in the Qing Thearchus tomb. It was an 8-headed purple gold-coiled dragon rod, called the 1,000-pound rod. The power of a sacred weapon was already at the level of the Holy Emperor's divine weapon in this world. Even a creator with 7 lightning tribulations would vomit blood with one swing. There was no problem giving it to the monkey. He threw the 1,000-pound rod to the monkey. Monkey took over the 1,000-pound rod and began brandishing it with a swoosh. It was as if monkeys were born to wield rods. The battle instinct in the sacred battle ape bloodline allowed him to wield the 1,000-pound rod with ease. The golden monkey wields the 1,000-pound rod and pierces the heavens. Ha, not bad, not bad. Li Yu nodded in admiration, then waved at the monkey with a smile. The monkey kept the 1,000-pound rod and walked to Li Yu. Li Yu pointed at the monkey's forehead and let the system pass the cultivation technique that he had already prepared to the monkey. After giving him the weapon, he also had to give him the cultivation technique. The sacred battle ape's specialty, the 9 heavenly revolutions technique, and the heaven-raising rod technique, naturally had to be taught to the monkey. With the monkey's strength as a human immortal when he was born, it would be easy for him to recultivate the 9 heavenly revolutions technique. After cultivating the 9 heavenly revolutions technique to the perfected dragon realm, and then cultivating the human immortal acupoint technique of this world, the combination of the two would definitely increase his strength tremendously. A fighter would be formed very quickly. However, the monkey is still missing a set of armor. Once Li Yu's wicked sense of humor was triggered, he couldn't stop himself. Since he was a great sage and had a rod, how could he not have golden chainmail, phoenix feather purple gold crown, and lotus silk cloud walking shoes? I don't have any good armor on hand. I have to let the champion marquis speed up the looting. Liu pondered for a moment and realized that there were still quite a few powerful battle armors in this world. Skylight Horn Divine Armor, Tathagata Kasaya, Yuan Chan White Bone Armor, Imperial Heaven Primordial Dragon Armor. These were all ancient divine weapons. After I get these armors, I'll modify them and be equipped with a full set of great sage armor. Liu smiled and left the monkey to cultivate in the heavenly tomb. He then turned around and exited the heavenly tomb. To learn without thinking is to forget. To think without learning is to perish. Walking out of the loft, Liu saw little Ting Ting and the other little foxes were studying to study under Hong, to teach them. Especially little Ting Ting, 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 to Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, to Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting. Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Tinga, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting, Ting Ting. To Ting Ting, Ting, Ting Ting, Ting, Ting Ting, to Ting. Over the past few days, Liu had been cultivating, but the results were minimal. He hadn't started cultivating his soul yet. In terms of cultivation, he had already grasped the 9 esoteric mysteries, but he was stuck on the martial will. Yes, Liu's cultivation had run into trouble, because he still didn't understand his own heart. In order to break through to the next level of the human immortal realm, the fist intent had to materialize. In other words, the martial will had to be real. It was even more serious when it came to the cultivation of the soul. From calming mind to yang spirit, Liu understood everything clearly. He knew how to cultivate, but he could not start. According to the teachings of the origin world, after cultivating the body and nurturing the qi, it's time to connect with the spirit and comprehend the Tao. It's about unearthing one's own heart and finding one's own heart. Liu pondered as he walked around. In this world, worldly immortals need martial will. The sun spirit had to be even more determined. But what is my true intention? What is cultivation for? Immortality? Eternal indestructibility? Then what about after eternal immortality? Are you just going to eat and wait for death? All this time, as a loser who was just waiting to die, Liu had never thought about this problem. It wasn't until he comprehended the cultivation methods of this world that he was suddenly enlightened. The so-called Tao is one's own heart and desire. It's one's own preferences and ideals. But what are my ideals? Sleep until I wake up naturally every day and count money until my hands cramp? In Kangming's Tao is to know etiquette. His wish is for everyone to have food to eat. This EZ pursues everyone is a dragon, so that everyone in the world can control their own destiny. What about me? After experiencing so many worlds, all I can do is do as I please and mess around according to my preferences. If I'm happy, I'll give some benefits. If I don't like it, I'll scam them. Those who know are not as happy as those who enjoy, and those who enjoy are not as good as those who enjoy. What I like is what I want, and what I want is what I want. So, thinking of this, Liu's footsteps paused as his eyes glowed. To control everything and change the fate of others. Is this what I like? Is this my true heart? Liu took a deep breath. As if he was making a declaration to the world, he said his Tao, I control the heavens fate, and uphold the heavens' laws. My will is the will of the heavens. In a daze, there was a clap of thunder. Liu's mind was suddenly clear. His mind was clear as glass, shining brightly and illuminating the world. A moment of enlightenment. I'm suddenly enlightened. Liu laughed heartily and gave an order to the system. System, pour the pure soul energy stored in the resource vault into my soul. After understanding his true nature, the pure soul power that had been stored in the resource vault for a long time finally came in handy. Leaning lazily on a rock, Liu's mind sank into a sea of consciousness and began his first soul cultivation. Thus I have heard, the Sutra of the Past, Amitabha Sutra, flowed in his mind. In the endless void, A huge Buddha statue sat in the void. It was surrounded by brilliant lights and a river of stars. My will is the will of the heavens. Only one's heart and self, not limited by objects. This is freedom. As if the mighty voice of the heavens resounded in his mind, the brilliant Buddha statue shattered and turned into golden light. As the light surged, a figure slowly rose. Endless light bloomed, illuminating the world and illuminating the world. When the light gradually faded, the figure clearly appeared in Li Yu's mind. This figure was none other than Li Yu himself. At this moment, there was no Amitabha statue. Only Li Yu himself was left. Waves of pure soul energy merged into the image. The figure in his mind kept solidifying and growing. Li Yu's soul cultivation rose with a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sound. Focus, out of body, night travel, day travel, driving, manifestation, possession, until possession. Only then did the growth of his soul cultivation slow down. Am I already a ghost immortal? Li Yu asked the system to stop the infusion of soul energy. He gently exhaled and slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, there was no radiance, only a simple and unadorned purity. In his eyes, there was a crystal-like purity, but also seemed as deep as the void. After many twists and turns in search of immortality, I have traversed thousands of mountains, but still have not entered the door. Once I have seen through my heart, the true art has long existed here. Ha ha! My heart is outside the fence. From now on, I am free and unfettered. With a long song, Li Yu flicked his sleeves and stepped out of the valley. Chapter 199. Ghost immortals can only turn from yin to yang after passing the thunder tribulation. Li Yu's mind flickered, and his divine soul instantly left his body, silently rushing into the sky. Turning his head to look at the body leaning on the mountain rock on the ground, Li Yu suddenly had a feeling similar to facing the azure lotus avatar. There's still a big difference. His soul turned and landed beside his body. An invisible breeze gently rolled up, and another Li Yu appeared from nothingness. This was the manifestation of his soul. Facing the azure lotus avatar is also looking at myself, but that's two consciousnesses existing at the same time. In the current situation, there's no consciousness in the body, just like a vegetable. The soul chuckled and turned into nothingness again, drifting outside invisibly. At this moment, Li Yu looked like he was dozing off on a rock. When the soul travels, it is soundless and there is no resistance. No wonder there's the saying, traveling the world with a thought. Compared to flying with the body, the speed is much faster. After the soul returned to the body, Li Yu turned over and stood up. After moving his hands and feet, he suddenly felt that his soul was bound by the body and could not be freed. The soul travels freely and is indeed free. However, the path of the great Tao is smooth. Only cultivating the soul and not the body is the path to death. Li Yu naturally understood how to walk on his own path. The next step was naturally for his soul to pass the 9-stage thunder tribulation and his body to reach the peak of the human immortal realm. From there, he will be promoted to the Yang spirit. The thunder tribulation is the mighty power of heaven and earth under the guidance of Qi. It's not exactly the same as the lightning in the thunder pool. It's impossible to use the lightning in the thunder pool to replace it. If I want to transcend the tribulation, I'll have to wait until next spring at the earliest. It was only the 12th lunar month of winter. When next year's hibernation awakening, the spring thunder would explode and trigger the thunder tribulation. It was impossible to become a ghost immortal in a short period of time. However, it was not impossible to turn the soul from yin to yang. System, extract the pure spiritual power from the two sun god thoughts, and integrate the spiritual power of the sun god into my spiritual soul as long as I can bear it. Following Li Yu's command, a scorching aura surged forth and instantly engulfed Li Yu's soul. Boom! It was as if a blazing sun had risen within his divine soul. A scorching aura surged wildly. Li Yu felt as if he was a snowman under the blazing sun, as if he would melt at any moment. He's actually the strong? The power of venerable sun god was probably similar to that of a quasi-emperor, adding up the strength of my body and soul. I am at most at the first or second level of a mortal foundation. The difference in strength is still too great. Li Yu's heart skipped a beat. Immediately, his godly soul manifested the self-dharma form of my will is heaven's will. A will that was above the heavens and realms absorbed all the scorching aura that had gathered in his godly soul into himself. After reaching the limit of Li Yu's endurance, the system stopped pouring the power of the sun god into him. Clang! A mighty heavenly sound rang out, and a brilliant brilliance bloomed above the self-dharma form. The faint black smoke was annihilated in the brilliance, and his entire divine soul became as clear as glass, spotless. The brilliant brilliance faded away, and a divine soul that was exactly the same as Li Yu himself, like a real human body, stood in his heart lake and sea of consciousness. The will of the ruler that controlled the heavens and was above all things in the world was emitted from his divine soul. The heavens and all living beings bowed their heads. Phew! Li Yu exhaled softly. He felt that his spirit was filled with yang qi. It was sparkling and translucent, giving him a feeling of fullness. It was completely different from the illusory feeling of his spirit from before. The way of the sun god is to turn illusory into reality. No wonder many ghost immortals in this world can manifest all kinds of ghost gods. It turns out that they turn illusory into reality. Feeling the earth-shaking changes in the power of his divine soul, Li Yu was very satisfied. His trip out to relax actually had such a big harvest. In the blink of an eye, he had jumped many levels. The cultivation of my divine soul will not increase much before the thunder tribulation. Next, I have to put my mind on martial arts. First, I have to condense the will of martial arts. Li Yu smiled and turned to walk toward the deep valley. Woof, woof, woof. Just as he was about to turn around, he suddenly heard a fierce barking behind him. Where did this wild dog come from? Li Yu frowned and turned his head to look behind him. In the forest behind him, more than 10 fierce mastiffs rushed out and surrounded Li Yu, barking wildly. These mastiffs were very strong. They were the size of calves, with sharp teeth and ferocious expressions, just like lions. While barking, the mastiffs arched their bodies and glared at him, revealing a fierce, murderous aura. This is a mastiff? Li Yu blinked and looked at these fierce mastiffs that looked similar to lions. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Good heavens, this is a golden mastiff. That golden fur, that strong physique, that fierce appearance, without 1,000,000 or 800,000, it is impossible to buy. Li Yu was very close to the snowy highlands in his previous life because of the location, so he was very familiar with these snowy highlands divine hounds. At this moment, seeing these fierce mastiffs that were more perfect than the snowy highlands divine hounds, his eyes lit up. However, he was interested in mastiffs. Mastiffs did not have a good impression of him. Woof! With a roar, more than 10 mastiffs pounced on Li Yu, their mouths full of sharp teeth, biting fiercely. Oomph! After restraining his aura, the mastiffs actually dared to attack. Li Yu snorted, and the aura that was above all living beings suddenly burst out. Woof, woof, woof! The mastiffs trembled in fear and whined. They curled up on the ground with their tails between their legs, not daring to move at all. Quick! Quick! The hunting dogs are barking. They must have found the fox's nest. Great! Princess, when I hunt the white fox, I will make a fox fur coat for you. A rush of horse hooves sounded. 2 men and 2 women, riding tall and powerful dark red horses, rushed out from the distance with a rumbling sound. Be careful, don't damage the fur. A woman in a white robe behind shouted to the man in front of her. Princess, don't worry, my archery skills are passable. The man in front took out a bow and arrow, waved it in his hand, and then galloped over on his horse. Look at my divine archery. The man in front raised his bow and arrow and was about to draw the bow, but suddenly found that the mastiffs were not surrounding the fox, but a handsome 16 or 17-year-old boy wearing a mink coat. What was even more surprising was that the dozen or so ferocious mastiffs were actually lying on the ground, shivering. They were even emitting a series of whines from their mouths. "Well, who are you? How dare you hurt my beloved dog? You got guts. I am the son of King Chung. How dare you? Get out!" Liu bellowed. Then the mastiffs ran away pathetically with their tails between their legs. The horses neighed and turned to run. Even the riders on their backs fell off their horses, and they were dragged until they could not care less about their screams. "Ah, Prince!" The few people who came from behind screamed when they saw the situation. Nay, the horses under them neighed fiercely and turned to run away in a panic. They could not control the reins even if they held on tightly. When they turned around, they saw the young man in the fur coat standing with his hands behind his back. They felt the aura of supremacy between heaven and earth. The few of them paled and broke out in cold sweat. "Run! Run!" How could they offend such a person? Everyone panicked and fled in a sorry state. Chapter 200. I didn't expect that my soul would be used to scare a bunch of dogs the first time I show it. Liu shook his head with a wry smile. He then looked at Shuli beside him and said, "Since you're here, why don't you show yourself?" "Huh? You can see me?" A gust of wind whistled, and the figure of a young man appeared in the wind. Once he appeared, the young man looked at Liu in surprise. "That's strange. I didn't show myself. How can you see my soul?" "I didn't see it." Liu smiled. "I just felt that the Inshi there was a little heavier, so I tried to bluff you. Then, you came out on your own." The young man was stunned for a moment. His expression was blank. After a while, the young man looked at Liu and laughed loudly. "Ha ha! How interesting. You're really interesting. I'm by Ziyue. It's really rude of me to meet your soul. I'll come and visit you again after I change back to my real body." The young man cupped his hands at Liu and then instantly turned into nothingness and disappeared. If he didn't show himself, only the soul could see his soul. The naked eye couldn't see his soul. However, soul, I can see it too. Liu smiled. He had opened the eye's aperture and cultivated the 9 esotericas. The forwarding secret of the 9 esotericas was to see through all things and calculate the heavenly secrets. His eyes already had the ability to see through all things. Although he hadn't mastered it yet and couldn't see through all 9 heavens and 10 earths, it was too easy for him to see a wandering soul. After a while, a young man in white with long hair, a wine gourd hanging on his waist, and a long sword on his back jumped down from the mountain ridge and came to Liu. "I was rude just now. Sorry for making a fool of myself." Bai Ziyue stepped forward and cupped his hands at Liu in a forthright manner. His behavior was very heroic. "I'm Liu." Liu also cupped his hands and smiled. "Bai Ziyue, one of the 8 great demon immortals in the world. You're really extraordinary." "Huh? Do you know me?" Bai Ziyue was stunned again. He raised his eyes and glanced at Liu, but he couldn't see any abnormality. It was as if he was an ordinary young man. However, in front of the 8 great demon immortals of the world, he was so calm and unruffled. Furthermore, with just a soft shout, the dozen mastiffs, for people, and 4 horses were scared witless. No matter how one looked at it, it was unusual. "Liu? Who is this person? Why have I never heard of such a person before?" Bai Ziyue muttered in his heart, but he couldn't figure it out. "I'm very familiar with that old Tuesday. I've heard him mention you before." Liu explained. Then he extended his hand and led Bai Ziyue into the valley like a host welcoming a guest. "Mr. Bai is here." The barking just now had frightened the foxes. At this moment, everyone in the secluded valley looked at the entrance of the valley nervously. Seeing Liu and Bai Zi jump in, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Liu's vital energy and blood were like the scorching sun. His martial arts cultivation must be extraordinary. As one of the 8 great demon immortals, Bai Ziyue naturally wouldn't have any problems with these 2 people around. "Mr. Bai, this way please." Old Tu welcomed Bai Ziyue into the stone room in the secluded valley and serve him tea. I won't be drinking tea. Bai Ziwa chuckled and placed the gourd on his waist on the table. He waved at Li Yu and Hong Yi and said forthrightly, Come, 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 let's have a toast. All right. Li Yu smiled and sat down at the table. Thank you. Hong Yi cupped his hands and sat down too. He said to have a toast, but Bai Ziwa took out a wine gourd. It seemed like he wanted everyone to take a sip from the wine gourd. Li Yu's scalp went numb when he thought about drinking with the men's saliva. He quickly waved his hand and took out 3 white porcelain wine cups. The 3 white porcelain cups had a glazed color like suet white jade. The cups were very thin and had a translucent feeling. Good technique. Good porcelain. Bai Ziwa and Hong Yi praised Li Yu's technique at almost the same time. Bai Ziwa was praising the ability to store items in the void. As one of the 8 great demon immortals, he could naturally see that this technique was very impressive. Spatial treasures could only be activated by at least ghost immortal cultivation. If it wasn't for the spatial treasures, it would be very frightening. What kind of situation was it exactly? Bai Ziwa glanced at Li Yu. He only felt that this person was simply unfathomable and immeasurable. Hong Yi didn't cultivate and didn't understand this. Instead, he praised these exquisite porcelain cups. It's just a few wine cups. Li Yu smiled indifferently. Brother Bai's wine must be even more extraordinary. I can't wait to taste it. Ha! Bai Ziwa laughed heartily. He stood up, picked up the wine pot, and poured 3 cups of wine into the cups. A fragrance assailed his nostrils. There was also a faint medicinal fragrance in the wine fragrance. This gourd wine must be something that could greatly replenish one's vitality. Bai Ziwa raised his cup and said with a smile, Let's drink. Let's drink. Li Yu and Hong Yi raised their wine cups and drained them in one gulp. When the wine entered their stomachs, the fragrance filled their mouths and tongues. Li Yu didn't feel anything, but it was different for Hong Yi. Good wine. Hong Yi drank a cup and felt a warm aura rising in his body. It was as if all the pores in his body were emitting a warm current. A sweet fragrance filled the air, filling the room with fragrance. Good wine. Immortal wine is just SOSO. After drinking a cup of wine, Hong Yi's whole body heated up. He was also in high spirits. After drinking Mr. Bai's wine, I feel that the wine is just like the person, extraordinary. I felt something in my heart, and it actually made me compose a poem. As he said that, Hong Yi stood up and recited loudly. When the sword is out, the night wind blows, and no one is a match for it. I didn't want to be conferred the title of Marquis, but it's what I want. Good. What a great, but it's what you want. Hearing this poem, Li Yu's eyes lit up. He thought to himself, as expected of the future, is he? What a great, but it's what you want. Li Yu himself had just understood his own heart, and he was deeply touched by this, but it's what you want. Follow your heart, your thoughts are clear, your spirit will be stable forever, and your will be clear. If you don't even follow your heart, how can you strengthen your spirit? How can you transcend the sea of bitterness? That being said, Bai Ziwa shook his head with a bitter smile. If I can't be invincible, how can I follow my heart? Speaking of this, Bai Ziwa heaved a long sigh. He seemed to have something on his mind, and his interest in drinking faded a little. I've made a fool of myself in front of Mr. Bai and Mr. Li. Seeing his poem, Bai Ziwa's interest was greatly reduced, and he looked gloomy. Hong, he cupped his hands in apology and sighed secretly. Yes, if I don't have invincible power, how can I follow my heart? So, I need power. Thinking of his own situation, the cold shoulder and bullying at home, Hong, he clenched his fists tightly, and the determination in his heart became more and more resolute. With just a few words, the winner is obvious. Li watched coldly from the side. Seeing this situation, he sighed in his heart. Both want to follow your heart, but also don't have invincible power. Bai Ziwa had no confidence at all, but Hong, he was unwavering. So, there's a world of difference between our future achievements. Chapter 201. Lying high in the clouds, the praying mat attains the truth. Beyond heaven and earth I am. Liu stretched and got up from the bed. Before he could finish reciting a poem, he heard little Ting Ting shouting anxiously outside the door. Brother, brother, they are leaving. They are leaving. Leaving? Who is leaving? By Ziyue or Hong Yi. If they want to leave, just leave. Liu put on his clothes and answered casually. 5 days had passed since he drank the wine that day. In these few days, Liu spent most of his time in the heavenly tomb space, practicing martial arts with Monkey. The continuous battles allowed Liu's battle experience to increase rapidly, because he needed to use his own martial arts cultivation to condense his martial will. Liu let the system imbue him with the battle experience he had extracted in the past. Then, through the continuous battles with Monkey, he wanted to master it and condense his own martial will. The battle experience extracted from Zhou Yi's world included the divine consciousness of great success Saint Physique, as well as what Zhou Yi handed over when he fought monsters and leveled up. The battle experience of Xiao Feng's world completely came from the soul body in the heavenly tomb space. These battle experiences were refined and summarized by the system according to Li Yu's own foundation, and then integrated into Li Yu's mind. These battle experiences were very varied and very complicated. Battle Saint Technique. One technique to derive 10,000 techniques. No matter what technique it was, Liu could derive it with the Battle Saint technique, but it was still not enough to condense his martial will. Because Liu had never really fought with anyone before. There was a huge difference between practicing martial arts and actually killing people. Could it be, I have to go to this world's army? But with my current strength, the army, I can wipe them out with one sword. What's there to play? Liu turned his gaze to the virtual illusion set by the system. In the illusion, I can create some enemies and then kill a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This should be enough to condense my martial will, right? Brother, brother, what are you doing? Come out quickly. Outside the door, Xiao Tingting's anxious shouts woke Liu from his contemplation. He hurriedly opened the door and walked out. What's wrong? What happened? Liu saw that Xiao Tingting's smoke rings were a little red, and there seemed to be traces of tears. He was very surprised. Brother, Fei Fei, Sang Sang, and Ching Ching are all leaving. Little Tingting's tears rolled down her cheeks. The little fox is leaving? Liu frowned and quickly thought of the reason. A few days ago, aristocratic children had come to hunt foxes, which meant that the place where the foxes lived in seclusion had been exposed. In order to avoid trouble in the future, the foxes decided to move. Don't worry, Big Brother has a way. Liu reached out and picked up Xiao Tingting before walking out of the pavilion. After he went out, he walked to the side of the stone room where the foxes lived. The old fox Tu Yuan was saying goodbye to Hong Yi. Young Master Li. Seeing Liu walking over, the old fox and Hong Yi greeted Liu together. Brother Li, Hong Yi has disturbed you in the secluded valley for many days. I will be taking my leave now. The foxes decided to move, and there was no need for them to teach anymore. Furthermore, the new year was coming, and Hong Yi had to return home. After saying goodbye, Hong Yi quickly left the secluded valley. Mr. Hong has left. Little Brother Li, we will be leaving too. Tu Yuan turned his head to look at the secluded valley. His eyes were filled with helplessness and reluctance to part. Leaving? Is it because of those aristocratic children who came to hunt foxes? Liu looked at Tu Yuan and shook his head with a smile. If it's just to avoid those people, why would you need to move? Just leave it to me. Leave it to you? The old fox widened his eyes in shock. Young Master Li, what is your identity? You can make those aristocratic children not dare to come? It's not what you think. Liu waved his hand and said to the old fox, Follow me. You will know when you see it. After saying that, Liu pulled Xiao Tingting's hand and turned to walk towards the entrance of the secluded valley. The secluded valley was surrounded by mountains, and there was only one entrance that was 100 feet wide that led to the outside world. Liu's plan was very simple. He just needed to seal the entrance of the valley so that no one could enter. Walking to the entrance of the valley, Liu waved his hand and shot out a streak of mysterious yellow qi. He then raised his hand. Rumble. There was a loud sound that shook the earth. It was really an earthquake. The ground at the entrance of the valley trembled violently, and the cliffs on both sides shook violently. Ah, this is... Under the horrified eyes of the group of foxes, the ground at the entrance of the valley suddenly rose up. As Liu raised his hand, the entire ground at the entrance of the valley rose up continuously until the entire entrance of the valley was filled with soil and rocks, connecting with the cliffs on both sides. The entrance of the valley has been sealed. Now we don't have to worry about them attacking. Liu waved his hand and retrieved the mysterious yellow chi. He then turned to the group of old and young foxes and nodded with a smile. Tu Yuan and the little foxes were already dumbfounded, as if they had been scared silly by Liu's actions. Only Xiao Tingting, who was standing beside Liu, did not have the slightest bit of shock on her face. Instead, she raised her head proudly. Move the mountains, and fill the seas. After a while, the old fox Tu Yuan finally caught his breath and looked at Liu in shock. Your Excellency, actually have such a divine ability? You? The old fox suddenly muttered Liu's name, and his voice was getting louder and louder. When he said the word you for the third time, it was almost like a scream. So, you are His Majesty Emperor Yu. The old fox naturally heard the words "my name is Yu" that resounded through the sky. At this moment, the old fox's legs went soft, and with a plop, he knelt down on the ground and bowed deeply to Liu. Old Tu, why do you have to do this? Liu smiled and stretched out his hand to help Tu Yuan up. We have been together for so many days. Why are you treating me like an outsider? My sister and the little ones hit off. Let's just be like before. Yes, Tu Yuan agreed respectfully, but the same as before? Let me continue to call Emperor Yu as my little brother. It's fine if I don't know, but now that I know, how dare I call him that? Do I think I have lived too long? What happened just now? In midair, a cool breeze whistled, and Bai Ziwe's soul appeared in front of everyone. What happened? I was already 10 miles away when I suddenly heard some movement here. So my soul left my body and came over to take a look. The entrance of the valley is blocked? This is... Bai Ziwe suddenly turned his head and looked at Liu. His face went blank. Could it be that it was caused by this guy, who he couldn't figure out? Mr. Bai, just now His Majesty Emperor, you made a move and sealed the entrance of the valley with a great divine ability that could move mountains and fill seas. With the entrance of the valley sealed, those people can't enter. We don't have to move. The old fox smiled and explained to Bai Ziwe. Move? Why would they need to move when they were living with Emperor Yu? Was there any place safer than Emperor Yu in this world? Emperor Yu? Bai Ziwe screamed, and suddenly turned his head to look at Liu. His soul trembled violently. Liu? Emperor Yu? I actually got along with the sun god Reverend for a few days and even drank wine together. Bai Ziwe suddenly felt that this encounter was really too wonderful. Greetings to His Majesty Emperor Yu. Bai Ziwe hurriedly bowed deeply in front of Liu. Chapter 202. After displaying the ability to move mountains and fill seas, the West Mountain Valley regained its peace. Without the teacher's guidance, little Tingting and the little foxes were in a mess again. Thus, Bai Ziwe volunteered to take on the task of teaching the little fellow and stayed in the West Mountain Valley. Looking at this situation, Bai Ziwe did not seem to intend to leave. This was not difficult to understand. To be able to follow Emperor Yu, a young god venerable, no cultivator would want to leave. Just a few words of advice and a few things from the gaps of one's fingers would be a huge gain. With someone taking care of the little fellow, the West Mountain Valley settled down again. However, the Marquis Champion could not settle down. Under the cliff of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, the Marquis Champion had been cultivating in seclusion for several days. At this moment, the Marquis Champion was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock, circulating the creation martial Tao, condensing chi, blood, and vital essence, and opening one by one. Bang! 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 A series of explosions erupted from the Marquis Champion's body. Rays of light bloomed on the marquee champion's body. 108 acupoints opened consecutively. The creation heavenly melody rose faintly. The creation of heaven and earth, all living things were born. Endless creation scenes circulated in the acupoints. Majestic and vast power surged in the body. Uh-huh. The marquee champion stood up and laughed wildly. I am already a human immortal. I am already a human immortal. Old man, just you wait. When I overthrow you from that position, only I, the son of destiny, am qualified to sit on the throne of the great Qian dynasty. With a tap of his foot, the marquee champion landed in a small river at the bottom of the cliff. Landing on the water, the marquee champion walked forward as if he was walking on flat ground. A human immortal's body could not wade in water. A long spear appeared in his hand, and the marquee champion brandished it with a swish. Kill! A cold light flashed, and the spear shot out like a dragon. Monstrous killing intent, and the sky, full of spear shadows, turned into an angry dragon, roaring and ruthlessly stabbing at a huge rock in front of him. Boom! A loud explosion sounded. The huge rock, dozens of feet high, turned into powder under this attack and scattered in all directions. Good, good, good. The marquee champion laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. Sky Snake King, just you wait. I will come find you immediately. From now on, you just have to make my bed obediently. The Marquis of Champion was about to teleport back to the Green Kill Pass camp when he noticed a flash of spiritual light at the corner of his eyes, which made him stop in his tracks. What is this? A crescent-shaped object that flickered with an icy light slowly floated up from the mountain rocks that had been shattered by the Marquis of Champion's attack. Amidst the chilliness, there was a sacred aura. Another supreme treasure? The Marquis of Champion was overjoyed. I am indeed the Son of Heaven. It is indeed a great fortuitous encounter, with great luck on his body. Taking a step forward, the Marquis of Champion reached out and grabbed the crescent-shaped object. My name is Cold Moon. I am the moon god of Cold Moon Shrine. Because the frigid moon tribe was destroyed by the heavenly dog tribe, I was also sealed within the mountain rock. Thank you, young master, for saving me. From today onwards, Hanuel will definitely. As soon as he received the crescent moon, a cold female voice rang out in the Marquis Champion's mind. Moon Goddess? A deity of the tribe? Hearing the two words, Moon Goddess, the Marquis Champion was no longer in the mood to listen to what Cold Moon was saying. A deity formed from incense offerings, formed from the wishes of all living beings. This kind of ghost god formed through sacrifice was the pure and rich power of the divine soul. What did the Marquis Champion lack the most? His physical cultivation had already reached the human immortal realm, but his spiritual energy had been combined with the Qian Emperor's spell, making it impossible for him to cultivate the spiritual path. What he lacked was the power of the divine soul. As a soul from the heavens beyond heaven, how could the Marquis Champion not know that the path of the sun god required both the physical body and spiritual energy to advance together? I am lacking in spiritual energy cultivation, and now a deity from incense offerings has come to my doorstep? Haha, I am indeed the Son of Heaven. The Marquis Champion laughed maniacally, ignoring what Cold Moon was saying, and directly activated the Taotai Jade Pendant. Heaven-devouring great Tao, devour her for me. The pitch-black Taotai beast appeared, opening its mouth like a black hole and swallowing the crescent moon. The Marquis Champion gained something again? As expected of the boy who gives out treasures, Liu was fighting with the monkey in the heavenly tomb when he suddenly heard the system notification and realized that the Marquis Champion had sent something over. Moon God? A deity formed from incense offerings? This kind of deity is the Peach God and Willow Ghost. However, absorbing the power of faith from incense offerings is also worth studying. Liu nodded and stopped paying attention. He asked the system to send over some of the spiritual energy of the ghost deities who died in the battle for the treasure in Emperor Yu's cave. The Taotai would pay the Marquis Champion according to the rules. Liu ignored it and continued fighting with the monkey. On the Marquis Champion's side, the heaven-devouring great Tao swallowed the moon god. Soon, a pure spiritual energy seeped into his mind. The Marquis Champion felt his mind shake, and his spiritual energy became much stronger. Phew! The Marquis Champion opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Very good. As long as I swallow a few more ghost deities or these kinds of incense offerings, I will be able to break through the old man's seal and cultivate the path of the spiritual energy. A clear light flashed, and the Marquis Champion's figure instantly disappeared. Long-distance teleportation. As long as I've been to a place before, I can teleport. The heaven-devouring great Tao is indeed powerful. Seeing the familiar scene of the past city, the Marquis Champion felt relieved. The Marquis is back. The Marquis is back. Seeing the Marquis Champion appear, the soldiers on the past city shouted excitedly. The Marquis Champion walked to the past city and raised the long spear in his hand. Soldiers, I am back. Beat the drums. Gather the soldiers. Prepare for battle. This time, I will bring all of you together to wipe out Yuan Ming. Victory! 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 Flags fluttered, swords and spears formed a forest, war drums shook the sky, and the mountains roared like thunder. The Marquis Champion was annoyed by the Sky Snake King, and now that his strength had skyrocketed, he naturally wanted to take revenge. As soon as he returned to the past city, the Marquis Champion immediately ordered his troops to set out. The flames of war were ignited once more. The nobles of Yuan Ming were beaten until they cried for their parents. They sent treasures, beauties, horses, and weapons as they cried and begged for mercy. However, how could the Marquis Champion, who only wanted to take revenge on the Sky Snake King? He took the things, but he continued to fight. The Iron Cavalry invaded like fire. The Marquis Champion swept 3,000 miles and wiped out 13 tribes of Yuan Ming. News of victory spread quickly. The relay station that sent the news of victory to the Marquis Champion lost dozens of horses. Within the Jade capital, from the Big Dry Emperor to the officials, they were all frightened by the might of the Marquis Champion's army. The heavens have blessed the Emperor. The Minister of War happily reported during the court meeting. Your Majesty, the Marquis Champion has traveled 3,000 miles and spread the might of the Great Gone. Yuan Ming has already sent a letter asking for peace and is willing to give up 5,000 miles of land, 10,000 horses, 100,000 cows and sheep, 500 chests of gold, and 3,000 beauties. Kiki, as expected, it is a joyous matter. The Big Dry Emperor laughed happily. As expected of the Marquis Champion. These days, the reports of victory have piled up. The Big Dry Emperor looked very happy, but a trace of darkness flashed through his eyes. The Marquis Champion was his illegitimate son. However, his soul seemed to have been taken over by a ghost immortal. The Big Dry Emperor saw that something was wrong, so he used a technique to merge his soul and body, making him unable to cultivate the Tao of divine radiance. Although the Marquis Champion had grown quickly and was already a martial sage at such a young age. However, everything was still under the Big Dry Emperor's control. However, during this period of time, he seemed to have lost control. Chapter 203. He had taken down 3 cities in 3 days. The Marquis Champion's attacks were like fire. The experts of the Western Cloud Mist Nation could no longer sit still. This fellow dares to attack again? Did he eat a leopard's gall? After coming out of seclusion, he actually heard the Marquis Champion attacking again. The Sky Snake King's eyes shone with a cold light as a deep darkness spread out. The mystic Heaven Holy Land was a supreme existence in the Western Cloud Mist Nation. As the Tao companion of Hall Master Nalen, the Sky Snake King had a supreme position in the Western Cloud Mist Nation. He had long regarded the Western Cloud Mist Nation as his own territory. Hearing that the Marquis Champion was attacking again, the Sky Snake King was furious. Marquis Champion, you're dead this time. A black light rushed up. The Sky Snake King's figure swayed as he broke through the air. Not long after, a city filled with the flames of war and shouts of killing appeared before the Sky Snake King's eyes. Damn it! Seeing the bloody scene in the city, the Sky Snake King was furious. He roared at the city below, "Marquee Champion, come out and die!" What surprised the Sky Snake King was that the Marquee Champion did not show up after the roar. "Is that bastard not here?" The Sky Snake King slowly lowered his altitude. Just as he was about to land in the city, he suddenly heard a sneer behind him. "Haha, little beauty, you call me over in such a hurry. Do you want to throw yourself at me?" This cold laugh and mocking words caused the Heavenly Snake King to turn pale with fright. He quickly turned around to look behind him. "Marquee Champion? You?" The Sky Snake King's expression changed when he saw the Marquee Champion, who was wearing a sinister armor covered with spikes and holding a pitch-black spear in his hand, flying in the air. Why did a lightning tribulation ghost immortal have the advantage against a martial sage? Other than the ever-changing and mysterious Dao techniques, the biggest advantage was that ghost immortals could fly. Martial sages and even beginner human immortals could only walk on the ground. They could not fly at all. Now, the Marquee Champion was actually flying, and he was so close to him. If a martial sage got close to them, even a ghost immortal with 5 or 6 lightning tribulations would be flustered. If they were not careful, they might even suffer. The Sky Snake King was a ghost immortal with 4 lightning tribulation. Moreover, the Marquee of Champion could fly. Mahakala, the Heavenly Snake King, made a prompt decision and struck first to gain the upper hand. He immediately used the Great Black Heavenly Demon God spell. It's too late. As soon as the black light condensed, the figure of the Marquee Champion rushed in front of him in the blink of an eye. He raised the long spear in his hand and swept it out. Boom! The long spear lashed out fiercely at the Sky Snake King's abdomen, and the massive vital essence and blood dispersed the spell that the Sky Snake King had yet to form. The black chi dissipated, and the Heavenly Snake King spat out a mouthful of blood. He was in so much pain that the corners of his mouth twitched. Little beauty, just obediently wait for this Marquee's favor. The Marquee of Champion laughed loudly as he passed the spear to his left hand. He clenched his right hand into a fist and swung it out, heavily punching towards the Heavenly Snake King's abdomen. Boom! Before the Heavenly Snake King could come back to his senses, he suffered another heavy punch. Even a martial sage would find it difficult to deal with him in close combat, let alone the Champion Marquee, who was already a human immortal. With a punch, a monstrous blood chi erupted. The vast blood chi true essence shook the Sky Snake King to the point of dizziness. Little beauty, you won't be able to escape this time. The Marquee of Champion reached out and grabbed the Sky Snake King's neck. He pulled her in front of him and raised her up. Little beauty, this Marquee will love you well. The Marquee of Champion looked at the Sky Snake King with a sinister smile. His figure swayed, and he landed on the ground. Do you know Sky Snake King? This Marquee really wants to thank you. After landing on the ground, the Marquee of Champion pressed the Sky Snake King down by the neck. He sneered and said, "If it weren't for you chasing after me, how could I have obtained the divine stone spirit embryo? How could I have advanced to the human immortal realm? How could I have refined the divine armor?" Human immortal? Upon hearing the words human immortal, a trace of shock flashed across the Sky Snake King's eyes. The Marquee of Champion was only 17 years old and had already advanced to the human immortal realm. What kind of terrifying cultivation speed was this? What kind of opportunity did he obtain? What made his cultivation speed so terrifying? However, the Sky Snake King could no longer think about it. Rip! The Marquee of Champion tore off the Sky Snake King's clothes, revealing the fair and exquisite body. Woo woo woo. With the neck gripped, the Sky Snake King could only cry out loudly as he struggled with all his might. Ha ha! Little beauty, this Marquee said to pamper you. How could I go back on my words? Ha ha! You are indeed stunning. Look at your skin, it is as white as jade. The Marquis of Champion praised as the armor on his body automatically shrank. The spikes retracted, and the horns on his head also retracted. The entire armor turned into a layer of skin and returned to the spear in his hand like liquid. This is the Skylight Horn Divine armor. Back then, the war god Shang picked the ancient sky dragon's horn and refined it with his own blood essence. It can change at will, fly in the air, wade in water, and be invulnerable to fire. The Marquis of Champions stretched out his hand to caress the Sky Snake King's skin and said with a smile, "If it weren't for your pursuit that allowed my strength to improve greatly, I wouldn't have discovered that the spear hid such a treasure. Ha, little beauty, you let me obtain such an opportunity. How can I not repay you? You should obediently be taken into this Marquis harem." The Marquis of Champion laughed loudly as he took off his clothes and was about to press down on the Sky Snake King. "Bastard, die!" An extremely furious shout rang out as a dazzling golden sword chi tore through the air. Between heaven and earth, boundless five elements metal chi gathered, causing this sword light to become all-encompassing, tearing the sky and cutting the clouds. Five elements, sword chi. Peacock King. When a Marquis of Champions saw this shocking sword chi, how could he still be in the mood to play the game of forcibly pushing down? He grabbed the spear, and his chi and blood quintessence surged. The Skylight Horn Divine armor covered his entire body. Spikes shot out, and two sinister curved horns appeared on his head. "Little beauty, your old lover is here to save you. Are you very happy?" The Marquis of Champion laughed nastily as he reached out and grabbed the Sky Snake King, using her as a shield to welcome this sword chi. Shameless! A furious roar came from the sword light, and an imposing youth appeared in the sword light. The youth's sword-like eyebrows were raised, and his eyes were wide open. His entire body was burning with rage. "Ha ha ha! Peacock King, I heard that you pursued the Sky Snake King back then." Later on, the Sky Snake King married the profound Heaven Holy Land's Hall Masternailin. Today, I've delivered the Sky Snake King to you. Come, take a closer look. This is someone else's wife. This kind of opportunity is not many. The Marquis of Champion raised the Sky Snake King, whose exquisite body was directly displayed in front of the Peacock King. Shameless! The Peacock King's fury erupted like a volcano when his true love was bullied like this. He was so angry that his entire body trembled. The Sky Snake King's exquisite body was right in front of him. The Peacock King only felt that taking another look was blasphemy and hurriedly turned his head away. "Peacock King, you've fallen in my trap." The Marquis of Champion revealed a trace of a cold smile as the spear in his hand radiated cold light. Chapter 204. Taking advantage of the moment when Peacock King turned his head, Marquis Champion moved. With a flash of clear light, Marquis Champion's figure instantly disappeared. In the next instant, Marquis Champion's figure appeared behind Peacock King. "Go to hell." The pitch-black spear in his hand was like a furious dragon emerging from the sea as it ruthlessly pierced towards Peacock King's heart, taking the opponent by surprise and attacking when he was unprepared. Marquis Champion's move was extremely proficient in the art of war. Peacock King currently only had the cultivation of 4 lightning tribulations. Being attacked by a human immortal, Marquis Champion, before he could react, his heart was pierced by the spear. "Marquis Champion, just you wait." Peacock King's face was filled with malevolence as he roared furiously. Then his figure suddenly exploded, turning into surging 5 elements metal chi. Only an egg-sized silver pill was left floating in the air. Sword pill? Damn it! It's actually just a sword baleful clone? Seeing this silver sword pill, Marquis Champion's expression changed as he roared furiously. "Just a sword pill? I will destroy this sword pill too." Roar! The pitch-black Tautai beast materialized and swallowed the sword pellet that was floating in midair. "Little beauty, your old lover is already finished. Now no one can save him. Damn it! You actually self-destructed?" After controlling Taotai to swallow Peacock King's sword pill, Marquis Champion was about to deal with Sky Snake King when he suddenly realized that Sky Snake King's soul in his hand was condensing and compressing. Vast energy rushed out like a volcanic eruption. Damn it! Even a human immortal would not be able to withstand the self-destruction of a four-tribulation ghost immortal. Marquis Champion made a prompt decision as he flung Sky Snake King away. His figure flashed as he dodged far away. Boom! With an earth-shattering explosion, endless darkness suddenly erupted and actually burst forth with a ray of extremely dazzling radiance. Heaven and Earth Yuan Chi shook violently. Even Marquis Champion, who had dodged far away, was still shaken by this force. It's actually not completely dead. It still wants to escape from its soul. After the violent explosion, Marquis Champion suddenly realized that thousands of shimmering thoughts had rushed out from the explosion. These thoughts broke free from the explosion, and with a flash of light, they were about to scatter in all directions. Want to run? You can't run. With a flash of clear light, the Marquis Champion instantly appeared beside these thoughts. Heaven-devouring great Tao, devour her for me. Tao Time manifested once again, and its huge mouth, like a black hole, swallowed the thought. However, this time, it was the Marquis of Champion who fell into the trap. Taotai swallowed all these thoughts in one gulp. The Marquis of Champion thought that he had killed the Heavenly Snake King, but he didn't notice that there were still dozens of thoughts that had escaped while sticking close to the ground. Bastard! Marquis Champion, I will grind your bones to dust. In a simple and unadorned stone room, a youth with a grave and stern appearance roared as he stood up. A five-colored brilliance circulated around his body, and a mournful sword cry soared into the sky. Sky Snake was humiliated and even killed one of my sword baleful clones. Very good. Marquis Champion, you're dead meat. The Peacock King took in a deep breath as he recalled the strange feeling that the Sword Emanation's avatar had felt. The Sword Emanation's avatar has been destroyed, but the divine soul consciousness I left in the sword pill is still there. In the end, the Marquis of Champion used a power that could devour the heavens and the earth to destroy my thoughts in the sword pellet. That power that could devour the heavens and the earth. Could it be? The Peacock King's expression changed drastically as a look of extreme shock flashed across his eyes. No wonder the Marquis of Champion's strength has increased so quickly. It turns out that Emperor Yu's treasure has actually fallen into his hands. In the secluded valley of the West Mountain, the Marquis of Champion has gained something again. Liu glanced at the resource warehouse and saw that there were two new items inside. 5 elements golden sword pill. This is the Peacock King's 5 elements sword baleful clones. This item can only be used to deduce the 5 elements great Tao. It's not very useful. Liu pursed his lips and turned to look at the next target. The divine soul consciousness of a four-tribulation ghost immortal? This is the Heavenly Snake King? What the heck? Could it be that the Marquis of Champion killed the Heavenly Snake King? Li was a little surprised by this result. A four-tribulation ghost immortal could create a world with a single thought. Why was it so weak? System, connect to Taotai and transmit the situation of the Marquis of Champion's battle. The Taotai Jade Pendant. Although it was disguised as a Dharma treasure, it was still a system. This ability to monitor the host's every action was naturally necessary. It's actually like this. Seeing the image transmitted by Taotai, Li was a little dumbfounded. The Heavenly Snake King underestimated the Marquis of Champion's strength. In a moment of carelessness, the Marquis of Champion got close to him. A ghost immortal getting close to a human immortal is like a sorcerer getting close to a warrior. No matter how powerful a sorcerer is, he is still afraid of a kitchen knife. Naturally, he was chopped to death. It's just that the Marquis of Champion's armor is not bad. The monkey only had one weapon now. He didn't even have a full set of equipment. The Heavenly Horn Divine Armor was an item of the ancient god of war. It was not bad to give it to the monkey. Liu smiled and marked the Marquis of Champion's armor as a must-have item. He continued to watch and saw that the Marquis of Champion actually wanted to force his way in, but was interrupted by the Peacock King's Sword Emanations clone. The Marquis of Champion used a shameless method to sneak attack the Peacock King's clone. In the end, the Heavenly Snake King self-destructed. What the heck? The Marquis of Champion is courting death. After Liu finished watching, he pursed his lips and shook his head. The Peacock King only killed one Sword Emanations clone. His true body was still there. Moreover, there were still 4 other Sword Emanations clones. Moreover, the Sky Snake King also had dozens of thoughts that escaped. Although the thoughts of a 4-tribulation ghost immortal were not like the sun god perfected one's thoughts, their souls would not be destroyed. However, as long as these thoughts found a host to nourish them, the Sky Snake King would be revived in a few years. After spending so much effort, not a single enemy died. Moreover, you even exposed the heaven-devouring Great Tao. Young man, you didn't play your killing game well. Of course, Liu naturally didn't care about how the Marquis of Champion was courting death. He placed his attention on the Sky Snake King's thoughts. The Sky Snake King cultivated the mysterious Heaven Darkness record. It uses the world's most original darkness as the foundation of cultivation. This cultivation technique is still worth studying. Liu smiled and let the system extract the cultivation technique manual that the Sky Snake King cultivated from his thoughts. Everything else is fine, but the Great Dark Mandara Canopy. This is a good thing. Liu looked at the Dark Mandara Canopy, Dharma spell that the system extracted, and nodded with a smile. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Light and darkness give birth to light in the extreme of darkness. Therefore, system, using the Great Dark Mandara Canopy as the foundation, derived the Great Light Mandara Canopy. One was the Tao of darkness, and the other was the Tao of light. The two opposites were unified. It seemed there was still the possibility of further improvement. Light and darkness, the two sides of Tai Chi, if yin and yang were added in, it would eventually become the Tai Chi seal. Light and darkness gave birth to each other. Tai Chi circulated, and yin and yang evolved. The power of this Dharma spell was definitely extraordinary. It can't be called a Tai Chi seal. Since my spirit and willpower are the sovereign intent, this Dharma spell shall be called Heavenly Prison. Liu was in high spirits and started to fiddle with his Heavenly Prison Dharma spell. As for the Marquis of Champion, who was he? What did it have to do with him? Chapter 205. Oh, what happened? In a quiet room in the profound sky sacred ground, a figure that seemed to be formed by the darkness of heaven and earth suddenly stood up amidst the swirling darkness. This person was the Lord of the sacred ground, Sky Snake King's Tao companion, Nalan Dark Empress. Sudden inspiration? What on earth happened that actually woke me up from my secluded meditation? Nalan Dark Empress stood up and walked out of the quiet room. Just as she arrived at the main hall, she suddenly saw dozens of dim crystal lights flying over from the sky. Sky Snake's thoughts. Nalan Dark Empress's expression changed greatly. She reached out her hand, and the dozens of crystal lights entered her hand. Their divine souls converged, and Nalan Dark Empress instantly received the message from Sky Snake King. Marquis Champion, you are courting death. Nalan Dark Empress roared angrily. Her vast and mighty dark aura surged like a raging tide. The divine might of a ghost immortal who had undergone 5 lightning tribulations caused the heaven and earth essence energy within a 10-mile radius to tremble violently. This was still because Sky Snake King had concealed the details of his humiliation. Otherwise, Nalan Dark Empress would probably explode from anger if she knew that her head had turned green. Long live the Marquis. The Marquis Champion's figure landed. Hearing the cheers of the soldiers below, he did not feel too happy. Sky Snake King, this woman, actually self-destructed? It is such a pity that such an outstanding woman cannot be included in the harem. At this moment, The Marquis champion still did not know that he was about to face a calamity. He was still feeling very regretful that Sky Snake King's self-destruction and the plan to include her in the harem had failed. The Marquis champion lacked divine soul cultivation, so he did not have a clear understanding of divine soul power. He thought that after destroying Peacock King's sword baleful clone, nothing would go wrong. However, he did not know that lightning tribulation ghost immortals could split their thoughts and connect their thoughts. Everything that the clone felt, the true body also knew. Therefore, he still did not know that his heaven-devouring great Tao had been exposed. Night fell. They had just conquered another city, and the soldiers of the three armies were all happy. The Marquis champion was lying on the bed in the city lord's residence. Beside him was a group of women. A mass of dark clouds covered the moonlight, and the night sky became pitch black. It was as if there was no light between heaven and earth, only endless darkness. The Marquis champion raised his eyebrows as he suddenly felt a faint, murderous aura. Before he could do anything, the sky suddenly shook violently. Infinite dark sky, dark divine emperor fist, a pitch-black fist, which seemed to be the pinnacle of darkness, smashed down. In the extreme darkness, a ray of bright light bloomed. Darkness could actually emit light, and it was incomparably pure, without a trace of impurities. The light on the fist blossomed, and the endless darkness in the entire night sky seemed to be summoned, gathering madly towards the light. Nayland Dark Emperor. The sudden attack caused the Marquis champion's expression to change. Under the power of this punch, the dark night sky was like a tsunami, setting off huge waves. The Marquis of Champion only felt that he would be drowned by this wave of fury at any moment. Clang! A shrill sword cry soared into the sky. Endless sword light shuttled back and forth in the air, forming a huge five-colored sword flower. 5 elements, sword formation, slash. Amidst the endless sword light, a cold and angry roar burst out. Peacock King. At this moment, the Marquis champion was shocked and angry. Peacock King and the master of the mysterious Sky Mansion were both overlords. Such characters actually launched a sneak attack. Moreover, the two of them joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Do you still want face? Well, at this time, he had already forgotten how he had shamelessly dealt with Sky Snake King and Peacock King. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, as if the mountains and rivers were shattering. Nayland Dark Emperor punched out, ruthlessly smashing the City Lord's mansion. The huge City Lord's mansion instantly turned into ruins. At the same time, endless sword light slashed down, and the sharp sword chi cut through the entire City Lord's mansion, turning it into dust. Umph! So what if you're a human immortal? Didn't you still kill him with one punch? The corner of Dark Emperor Nayland's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He was venting his anger. Sky Snake King was beaten up by the Marquis champion to the point that he only had a little thought to escape. Nayland Dark Emperor suppressed a breath of anger in his heart. He used the mysterious Sky Holy Land's treasure, the sun-concealing dark cloud, to gather the dark origin energy of heaven and earth, and attacked with all his strength. Nayland Dark Emperor was very confident in this attack. Even a human immortal would not be able to withstand it. However, you think you won just like that? Suddenly, a sneer sounded behind him. A figure with vast blood chi like raging flames instantly appeared behind him. A pair of steel-like arms powerfully hugged Nayland Dark Emperor tightly. Hugged from behind by a man, and hugged so tightly, so close. When had Nayland Dark Emperor experienced such a thing? An extremely strange feeling emerged in his heart. Among the scholar officials, there were many who liked men. However, at this moment, this feeling made Nayland Dark Emperor's heart tremble. He only felt a burst of numbness all over his body. Fortunately, he would not be numb soon. Roar! With a loud beast roar, a huge pitch-black Taodai beast appeared in the sky. As it roared towards the sky, its huge mouth with dense fangs opened. Like a black hole, it swallowed Nayland Dark Emperor in one gulp. An overlord with 5 lightning tribulations was instantly killed with just one move. Master of the mysterious Sky Mansion, 5 tribulation ghost immortal? So what? At this moment, the Marquis Champion's ferocious aura filled the sky. He looked down on the world and was extremely domineering. The heaven-devouring great Tao could only devour things that could not move or resist. Therefore, the Marquis Champion hugged Nayland Dark Emperor so that he could not move. Then, he directly swallowed him with the Tao-Dai Jade Pendant. For soul cultivators who were ghost immortals and above, their souls could already exist without their bodies. Even if their bodies were destroyed, they would not die. If the Marquis Champion directly attacked Nayland Dark Emperor, even if his body was destroyed, he would not be able to kill Nayland Dark Emperor directly. He would even be fiercely counterattacked by Nayland Dark Emperor. However, now that he had swallowed him in one gulp, he directly killed him cleanly and cleanly. What the hell? The Marquis Champion has really started to eat people? A person suddenly appeared in the resource warehouse, which gave you a shock. After obtaining the heaven-devouring Great Tao, the Marquis Champion had indeed embarked on the path of cannibalism? Yeah, it's actually like this. After figuring out the ins and outs, Liu was a little dumbfounded. The heaven-devouring Great Tao can be used like this? He had used the resource warehouse's recycling function countless times, but he had never thought that it could be used like this. As expected, I'm still not imaginative enough. I can't think of such a way to use it. The heaven-devouring Great Tao and the Marquis Champion, this extremely possessive guy, really complement each other. Liu praised and then shook his head. Such a method. I really can't use it. If it's a woman, hugging her is nothing. But for me to hug a man, Liu shivered all over, his scalp tingling. Chapter 206. Nayland Dark Emperor. This fellow still needs to be dealt with. Glancing at the resource warehouse, Liu smiled and shook his head when he saw Nayland Dark Emperor frozen in a resource warehouse, as if time had stopped. Mysterious Sky Mansion Lord doesn't seem to be of much use. I've already collected the technique from Sky Snake King's mind. There's another treasure? Sun concealing dark cloud? Cloud? Ha, that's great. Liu suddenly saw the sun concealing dark cloud and couldn't help but laugh. This sun concealing dark cloud had been transformed into a black robe by Nayland Dark Emperor. Of course, Liu didn't want clothes. What he wanted was the sun concealing dark cloud itself. This is a cloud. How can a monkey not have a somersault cloud? Isn't it delivered to my doorstep? As long as I modify it and add in the Tainment secret word and spatial techniques, wouldn't it be a somersault cloud? Liu's martial arts cultivation was still continuing. The sky prison technique was still being deduced by the system. Now, he was starting to make the so-called somersault cloud. Since the champion Marquis has obtained such a good thing, then I'll give him some benefits. Liu nodded his head in satisfaction and instructed the system. System, extract the soul power of Nayland Dark Emperor and give 20% to the champion Marquis. Also, give him a copy of the mysterious Sky Tao technique. Originally, Liu thought that the champion Marquis was courting death. Not only did he expose the heaven-devouring Tao, he also angered Nayland Dark Emperor and Peacock King. However, the result surprised Liu. Peacock King kept the matter of Emperor Yu's treasure a secret, so it was understandable that he wanted to secretly scheme against it. The champion Marquis's new method of using it really shocked Liu. Young man, you're quite interesting. I'm looking forward to the surprise you'll bring me. The champion Marquis's character was very similar to the main characters in the novels that Liu had read in his previous life. They were all arrogant, domineering, and arrogant, and they couldn't wait to move the entire world home. This kind of protagonist character was really too interesting. Liu chuckled and cut off the system connection, letting Tao Dai continue to swindle the Marquis of Champion while he himself ignored it. On the Marquis Champion's side, the Marquis Champion shuddered at the sudden influx of spiritual energy. The soul power of a ghost immortal of fifth tribulation was more than 10 times stronger than that of a ghost immortal who had not transcended tribulation. Even though he had only given Marquis Champion 20% of his soul power, it was enough to strengthen his soul. The great Tao of Xian Heaven, the Dark Mandara Canopy, in addition to the skyrocketing power of his spirit, the Marquis of Champion discovered that the profound Heaven Holy Land spirit cultivation method had also appeared in his mind. He was pleasantly surprised. After devouring Nayland and the Dark Emperor, the Marquis of Champion's eyes lit up as he turned to look at the Peacock King. This fellow must also be devoured. His cultivation method, the power of his soul, they're all mine. At this time, the Peacock King was also stunned. Seeing the Marquis of Champion's Tautai image and swallowing the Dark Emperor of Nayland and the Dark Emperor of Fifth Tribulation, the Peacock King's heart thumped, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. The unknown was the most frightening. The Peacock King joined forces with Nayland and the Dark Emperor to seek revenge, and he was originally full of confidence. A newly ascended human immortal would definitely die under the joint attack of 2 ghost immortals of fourth tribulation and above. Moreover, it was a sneak attack, but the situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. The Marquis of Champion directly used the Tautai image to swallow Nayland and the Dark Emperor of fifth tribulation in one mouthful, killing the strongest battle force in one move. How could the Peacock King not be shocked? He simply didn't know how powerful the Tautai image was. When he thought that this was Emperor Yu's supreme treasure, this was the Holy Emperor's divine weapon, left behind by the Sun God Reverend, his heart tightened. 5 elements, sword chi. 5 sword pills whizzed out, red, white, black, yellow, and green. 5 colors of brilliance circulated, and the power of the 5 elements in the world surged wildly. The Peacock King was experienced in battle, and naturally understood the principle of striking first to gain the upper hand. If the Marquis of Champion reached him, the fate of Nayland and the Dark Emperor would be right in front of him. These 5 sword pellets were refined from Peacock King's 5 elemental chi, combined with his own soul, thoughts, and blood essence. The 5 sword pills were divided into 5 directions. The sword pill in the south was red like fire, emitting a scorching aura. The sword pill in the north was like water, rippling like jade waves. The eastern pill was green like pine, showing a thin vitality. The western pill was silver like a knife, revealing a sharp aura. The middle pill was yellow like earth, revealing a heaviness like the earth. Among the 5 sword pills, only the western pill was dim. Obviously, it was still lacking some maturity. This was because the Marquis of Champion had destroyed one of his sword chi clones. 5 elements circulation. The Peacock King bellowed, and the 5-colored brilliance circulated. The 5 elements changed, as though the world was circulating and the sea was changing into mulberry fields. Releasing the 5 elements sword chi, the 5-colored brilliance circulated around the Peacock King, revealing a huge 5 elements sword formation. Kill. The 5 elements circulated, and the 5-colored sword light was endless. The dense sword chi was like a rainstorm, slashing towards the Marquis of Champion. Insignificant skill. Looking at the endless sword light, the Marquis of Champion sneered. The crystal clear light flashed, and the spatial teleportation was activated. The Marquis of Champion directly passed through the 5-element sword formation and appeared beside the Peacock King. Creation of the universe. The Marquis of Champion punched out, and a mighty fist intense surged. His masculine blood essence surged, and an indescribable scene appeared. These scenes were a little strange. In these unpredictable scenes, there seemed to be a feeling that everything in the world, including the mountains and rivers, all belonged to him. Mine, mine, they're all mine. There seemed to be a voice shouting and roaring in the unseen world. This was the Marquis of Champion's martial will. Although the fist intent had yet to materialize after advancing to the human immortal realm, this martial will was already very shocking. Everything will be mine. The country, The beauties, the wealth, the power, everything is mine. It's all mine. This is Emperor Yu's great Tao. The Peacock King was shocked by this monstrous fist intent. This kind of fist intent that made everything belong to me was very compatible with the Tao Ye's power of devouring everything in the world. This made the Peacock King very shocked. Even more so, the Marquis of Champion's void technique that could instantly break through the void and directly appear beside him. It was very troublesome. The Sword Chi clone was destroyed by the void technique in a single strike. Nalan Dark Emperor was devoured by the void technique in a single gulp. How dangerous was it for a human immortal to get close to a ghost immortal? At this moment, the only thought in the Peacock King's mind was to dodge. He had to increase the distance between them. With the intention of retreating, the Sword Chi rushed out, and the Peacock King's figure retreated rapidly, wanting to avoid the Marquis of Champion's attack. The Marquis of Champion was a human immortal. It was impossible for him to know divine soul technique. Therefore, he could only rely on the void treasure to travel through space. This kind of void treasure required a buffer time every time it was used. This bit of time was enough for the Peacock King to increase the distance between them and reorganize the battle. However, when the Peacock King rushed out on his sword, he was shocked to find that a clear light flashed. The Marquis of Champion actually appeared in front of him, smiling and opening his arms. And he himself was rushing into the Marquis of Champion's embrace with extreme speed. His iron arms closed, and the embrace sister killer was displayed. Roar! The Taodai rushed up and swallowed the Peacock King in one gulp. Chapter 207. What the hell? Liu was completely speechless. The champion Marquis seemed to have the idea of carrying the death in arms to greater heights. He had used this method twice in a row, which really made Liu shake his head. It was one thing to eat people for cultivation, but he even came up with a death in arms consummate skill. How could he endure this? Forget it. You can do whatever you want. Don't tell anyone that I know you. Liu shook his head and turned his attention to the Peacock King, who was kept in the resource warehouse. System: extract the Peacock King's spirit and record the 5 elements Great Tao into the resource warehouse. Then, according to the same rules, give the champion Marquis 20% of the spirit's power. After casually dealing with it, Liu no longer paid attention to it. These few days, Liu spent most of his time fighting in the system's virtual illusion world. Along the way, there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Stepping on piles of bones, he continued to advance. Then, he was drowned by endless enemies. After countless life and death situations, Liu's heart was filled with killing intent. Even if he tried to restrain it, it still made him emit a cold intent, which made the little foxes not dare to appear in front of him. Full of killing intent, it's not a good sign. Thinking of his own martial cultivation, Liu sighed secretly. Full of killing intent, it's obvious that I can't control it as I wish. It seems that it's impossible to condense martial will through pure killing. The so-called martial will is actually why do we fight? In other words, what is the meaning of my battle? Liu turned his head to look at the monkey, who was playing with a stick, and smiled as he waved his hand. Wu, what are you fighting for? Fighting for the Lord. The monkey knelt on the ground and answered without hesitation. Very good. Liu smiled and nodded. He waved his hand and let the monkey do what he wanted. My original intention is to control the heavens. My will is the will of the heavens. Then, the meaning of my battle is to fulfill my wish. My will is the will of the heavens. If the heavens want you dead, it's heavenly punishment. It's heavenly punishment. Thinking of this, Liu moved his mind and instantly appeared in the virtual space. System: begin the virtual battle. With Liu's command, the virtual scene changed instantly. In a brilliant starry sky, figures emerged from the void one after another. The Azure Emperor, Wu Shi, Vicious, the Holy Emperor Dojan, the deathless heavenly phoenix, all the great emperors from the world of the Book of Changes appeared in the void. Of course, These were all great emperors in their youth. If it was a real great emperor, there was no need to fight. He could crush Li Yu with just a finger. Let's fight one by one first. Amidst the endless battles between life and death, I condensed my martial will. Li Yu took a deep breath. System, choose a great emperor to fight me. Boom! As soon as Li Yu finished speaking, he suddenly heard a loud bang in the void. A sparkling and scorching pillar of light shot out and blasted into his chest. It pierced through his chest and created a huge hole. Damn! Before he could react, he was instantly killed by someone. Li Yu turned his head with a bitter expression and looked in the direction of the light. A young figure stood in the void with his hands behind his back. His endless majesty seemed to make the heaven and earth submit. He was holding an ancient mirror in his hand. Void mirror. Before he could finish his words, Li Yu's figure suddenly exploded. In the next instant, it condensed in the void again. Hiss! Li Yu rubbed his chest and grimaced. Although it's a virtual battle and I won't die, but it really hurts. Again, Li Yu gritted his teeth and continued to fight. Boom! Flames poured down from the sky as a huge furnace descended from the sky. Endless flames directly drowned Li Yu. Above the furnace, a majestic figure stood proudly. Eternal Universe Furnace. Li Yu's entire body instantly turned into ashes. Again, boom! A green immortal tier golden pagoda appeared and collapsed the eternal space-time. Jade Lake West Emperor. Li Yu died again. System, why is there even an Emperor weapon? How am I supposed to fight? After being killed 3 times in a row, Li Yu could not take it anymore. It was fine to fight against a young great emperor, but it was a young great emperor with an emperor weapon. How am I supposed to fight? I'm here to condense my martial will, not to court death. Settings have been changed. The emperor weapon setting has been removed. Hearing the system's notification, Li Yu heaved a sigh of relief and clenched his fist tightly. Without the emperor weapon, I don't believe I can't win. Again, just as Li Yu's voice fell, a figure appeared in the void in front of him. It was a woman, a silent and calm woman. This woman was barehanded. When she stepped out of the void, her divine aura was vast and mighty, causing the entire starry sky to tremble. A pair of calm eyes looked over, but it was as if she was the only one who was above all living things. Ruthless, Li Yu took a deep breath. Even if you're ruthless, I'll have to fight you first. Heaven's will is like a blade. Heaven and earth shall destroy. Activating the battle saint technique, Li Yu waved his hand and slashed down. With a clang, an extremely sharp sword chi tore through the void and slashed down at Ruthless. Ruthless raised his hand expressionlessly and grabbed at the sword chi. With a crack, the sword chi shattered and turned into nothingness. Absorb. Ruthless stretched out his hand and pulled. A powerful suction force appeared from his palm and instantly pulled Li Yu over. A force that could devour all life force erupted and instantly sucked Li Yu into ashes. Demonic heaven-devouring skill. After reappearing, Li Yu shook his head bitterly. Again, then, Li Yu began to court death again. Every great emperor had killed their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Even if they were great emperors in their youth, their battle experience and battle intent were all top-notch in the world. For someone like Li Yu who hadn't fought personally more than a few times, how could he be a match for those young great emperors? They could only be killed again and again in different ways. After an unknown amount of time, he didn't know how many times he had died. It wasn't until Li Yu punched out that he actually managed to shake an extremely oppressive figure. Only then did Li Yu realize that he could finally fight back. From being killed instantly at the start of the battle to being able to fight back now, it was already a huge improvement. This improvement made Li Yu happy, but he was instantly killed. Again, Li Yu fell to the ground again and stood up again and again. Great Void Handprint. When Li Yu used the Battle Saint technique to execute the Great Void Palm Imprint and activated the Wholeness Secret technique, he finally managed to injure a young great emperor. The battle was still ongoing. Liu went into seclusion for half a month. In the illusory world, he didn't know how much time had passed. When Liu left the heavenly tomb and walked out of the room, there was no longer any killing intent on his body. Only a gentle indifference was left. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.